You weren't expecting this, were you? I've been preparing something quietly for Christmas, a special gift just for you. A full 2-hour Demon Slayer What If mega compilation, bringing all your favorite stories together in one place. So turn up the volume, settle in, and unwrap this moment with me. Your adventure starts right now, and to all who walk this path with me, Merry Christmas! Most shonen main characters are ridiculously overpowered, and often end up surpassing their allies by massive margins. Tanjiro from Kimetsu no Yaiba is not quite like that. Even though he has sun breathing, a hard head, and an indomitable will, he's closely matched by his peers such as Zenitsu, Inosuke, Kanao, and Genya. But what if Tanjiro was a prodigy from the moment he was born? In today's video, we'll explore what would happen to the Demon Slayer story if Tanjiro was born with Yoriichi's powers. Now first up, let's establish what exactly Yoriichi's powers are. Being born with the Demon Slayer mark, Yoriichi had incredible physical prowess, with his speed and power even surpassing adults when he was just a child. On top of that, Yoriichi was a sword-fighting prodigy, and could beat the masters of his time when he was just 7 years old. Together with his strength, Yoriichi's combat skills allowed him to fight multiple demons at the same time with little difficulty. But on top of that, Yoriichi was also naturally capable of maintaining the selfless state, which made it impossible for demons like Muzan to sense any kind of killer intent from him. While the selfless state threw off the demon's attacking intuition, Yoriichi could also access the transparent world, allowing him to see his enemies' vital points. This gave Yoriichi the ability to predict attacks before they were even made and deal critical strikes to demons, while they struggled to keep up with him. And that brings us to the Taisho era, where Tanjiro is born with all of Yoriichi's powers. The characteristic forehead scar we see in the anime is replaced by a proper Demon Slayer mark, which his parents misinterpret as just an unusual birthmark. While Tanjiro's freakish abilities do catch his father's attention, they don't get noticed beyond that, as the Kamado family spends a pretty sheltered life. However, seeing Tanjiro's potential inspires his father, Kamado Tanjiro, to teach his son the Hinokami Kagura dance at a very young age, as his body appears to be tough enough to handle sun breathing. So when his father passes away, Tanjiro continues the tradition of the Hinokami Kagura, right up until his family is attacked by demons. Now this is where things change radically, because when Tanjiro returns home after the attack, he's actually able to restrain Nezuko and defend himself, despite her newfound strength. When Gyomei turns up and sees that Nezuko is a demon, he's actually more amazed by how well Tanjiro is handling the situation. He steps up and tries to break up the fight and slay Nezuko, but that's when Gyomei notices something strange. The boy is ridiculously strong enough to even resist a Hashira. Gyomei realizes that this is no normal child and directs Tanjiro and Nezuko toward the former water Hashira, Urokudaki Sakonji, who will properly restrain Nezuko and train Tanjiro to become a swordsman. Once again, even Urokudaki is surprised by Tanjiro's prowess, as he masters all the forms of water breathing in just a couple of months, instead of 2 years like in the original timeline. Because of this, Urokudaki actually alerts the upper ranks of the Demon Slayers, and he himself tells Ubuyashiki Kagaya about Tanjiro and Nezuko. As a result, the Kamado siblings are summoned to meet the Hashira right after the final selection, and before Tanjiro even receives his Nichiren blade. Now this goes just as you would expect, with Sanemi deciding to test Nezuko just like he does in the original timeline. He stabs the young demon and then slices his arm, taunting her with the scent of his blood. Tanjiro rushes forward to save Nezuko, but is pinned down by Obanai. But while he was struggling to break free the last time, this time he throws the Serpent Hashira with ease, and runs towards Sanemi and Nezuko. Everyone watches on in shock. How could a young boy that just passed the final selection overpower a Hashira? Gyomei alone keeps his cool and uses his chains to bind and restrain Tanjiro. Unable to escape, he screams out at Nezuko, telling her to stay strong and remember her humanity. Now, Nezuko cannot possibly remember her past, but Tanjiro's voice triggers an instinct within her and brings up Urokudaki's hypnosis that ordered her to protect all humans. Thus, Nezuko is able to turn away, and the Kamado siblings successfully pass the test. Kagaya announces that not only will Nezuko be allowed to live, but she will also be granted the freedom to hunt other demons alongside Tanjiro. So how did the main arcs of the Demon Slayer story change? Well, for starters, the entire Asakusa arc doesn't even take place, and instead, Tanjiro goes directly to meet Tamayo under Kagaya's orders. This means that he doesn't catch Muzan's attention in Asakusa as well, avoiding the confrontation with Susumaru and Yahaba. Tanjiro's first major achievement is within the Tsuzumi mansion, where he encounters and kills the drum demon. Now, this battle isn't even close, because Tanjiro's skills far exceed the powers of a lower moon. The only reason this arc is important for our story is because Tanjiro runs into Zenitsu and Inosuke, and the three form their partnership just like in the original story. The next key event is during the Mount Naragumo arc, where Tanjiro faces his first real challenge in the form of the Lower Moon 5 Rui. Unlike the other demons he's met so far, Tanjiro had to be super careful with Rui, as his web-based blood demon art would have killed Tanjiro instantly if he landed a hit. But once again, the power of the Demon Slayer mark is just too much of a gap for Rui to bridge, and he gets taken out by the water-breathing third form, Flowing Dance. Now, this arc is pretty special because Tanjiro isn't forced to realize that the Hinokami Kagura is a total concentration breathing technique. Furthermore, Nezuko doesn't awaken her blood demon art either, because she never had to jump out to save her brother. The reason this completely changes our story is because Tanjiro has performed a Hashira level feat by killing Rui. This means he's not taken with Zenitsu and Inosuke to the Butterfly Mansion to recover and train under Shinobu. Instead, Kaguya decides to send Tanjiro to train under the one demon slayer that is undeniably stronger than him, the Stone Hashira Gyomei. Being separated from Zenitsu and Inosuke means that Tanjiro would not be on the Mugen train or fight against Enmu. However, it's unlikely that Tanjiro's absence changes the events of the Mugen train arc that much, because even Rengoku alone could have taken out Enmu without too much trouble. During this period, Gyomei would help Tanjiro become conscious of his various powers, and properly study and analyze the selfless state and transparent world. Chances are that Gyomei himself also learns these abilities after hearing about them, since we know that he possesses immense natural talent. But so far, we've been forgetting an important student of Gyomei, Shinazugawa Genya. Having Tanjiro as a sparring partner would help Genya improve by leaps and bounds, and he would also learn certain aspects of maintaining the selfless state. Those of you who have been attentive to the story so far might be coming to an uncomfortable realization right about now. If Tanjiro is off training with Genya and Gyomei, does that mean he doesn't join the Entertainment District arc? Seeing how it's not an official mission, and Tengen just turns up at the Butterfly Mansion searching for 3 girls, it's pretty clear that Tanjiro and Nezuko won't be joining the fight. But that's a disaster scenario for the Demon Slayers, because Tanjiro's sun breathing won't save the day, and Nezuko wouldn't be able to beat up Daki and reverse Gyutaro's poison with her blood demon art. This means that not only Tengen, but Zenitsu and Inosuke are also killed in the Entertainment District arc. Tanjiro is devastated when he hears the news, and doubles down on his training. Fearing that his obsessiveness was getting out of hand, Gyomei sends Tanjiro to accompany Genya as he travels to the Swordsmith village. Now, this is where we converge back with the main timeline, as Tanjiro and Genya participate in the Swordsmith village arc just like they did earlier. Even though both Tanjiro and Genya are much stronger than they originally were in the Swordsmith village arc, Han Tengu's forms are still strong enough to give them plenty of trouble. You also have to remember that Nezuko is much weaker in this timeline, and trying to protect her is the trigger for Tanjiro to switch from water breathing to the Hinokami Kagura. Even with Nezuko as a liability, Yoriichi's skill set is just too powerful, and Tanjiro manages to execute Han Tengu's main body before daybreak. And this is where Muzan comes into the story. Earlier, the Swordsmith village arc ended with him witnessing Nezuko's immunity to the sun, but this time, he sees the sun-breathing demon slayer with the Hanafuda earrings through Han Tengu's eyes, and is struck by a feeling of absolute terror. There's barely any time for the Hashira training arc to take place in this timeline, because Muzan's response to witnessing Tanjiro in action is both swift and deadly. Just when the demon slayers recover, Muzan strikes at the Ubuyashiki mansion. But just like in the original timeline, Kaguya and Tamayo launch their contingency plan to poison and damage Muzan. But our timeline changes considerably when the demon slayers are dropped into the Infinity Castle. You see, even Muzan himself was no match for Yoriichi in his prime. Now, with a few years of training behind him, Tanjiro isn't quite at the same level of prime Yoriichi, but he's certainly strong enough to take on any of the upper moons on his own. But you also have to remember that Gyomei is stronger as well, meaning that this dynamic duo becomes even more ridiculously overpowered than in the original. What this means for the Infinity Castle storyline is that Kokushibo and Akaza get taken out with very little damage done to the Hashira and 0 casualties. Now, Shinobu will still die during her battle with Doma, and Mitsuri and Obanai will take some damage against Nakime, but the final forces that fight against Muzan in the Sunrise Countdown arc will be considerably stronger. Now things are looking good for the Demon Slayers, but you also have to factor in Muzan's trauma. Imagine seeing the image of Yoriichi in Tanjiro's face, but this time he's accompanied by a bunch of Demon Slayers that are incredibly powerful in their own right. In this timeline, Muzan probably decides to escape after realizing that Tamayo's poison has severely nerfed his healing factor. However, unlike with Yoriichi, the Demon Slayers are right there to take out any part of Muzan that Tanjiro misses. With their combined efforts, the Demon Slayers brutally hack at Muzan as the sun comes up, resulting in a victory that almost makes you feel sorry for the Demon King. So what do you think of this timeline? Is Tanjiro too overpowered to have a compelling narrative? Make sure to share your thoughts in the comments down below and check out the other awesome Demon Slayer videos on our channel. Sun breathing is the strongest breathing style in the Demon Slayer universe, and allowed Tanjiro to improve by leaps and bounds until he was on par with the Hashira. But what if he had another trick up his sleeve? In today's video, we'll look at how the Demon Slayer story would change if Tanjiro could use both sun and moon breathing. After Tsukikuni Yoriichi created sun breathing, it inspired the creation of many other techniques. Water breathing favored flexible, versatile, and fluid combinations, while the mighty stone breathers mastered both powerful offense and solid defense. The Wind Hashira threw caution to the wind with their rapid attacking style, and the Thunder Breathers channeled energy into their lower body to strike at blinding speeds. Finally, flame breathing was built around strikes so powerful that they burned. Water, stone, wind, thunder, and flame. These elemental styles formed the core of all breathing techniques, and gave birth to new innovations such as beast, insect, mist, and sound breathing. However, there was one other breathing style that was lost to history by the time the Taisho era came about. In his attempt to copy Yoriichi's sun breathing, Tsukikuni Michikatsu developed a completely new style, moon breathing. This breathing technique mimics the nature of the moon, using crescent-shaped slashes that are just as unpredictable as the waxing and waning moon in the sky. In the normal storyline, moon breathing disappeared from the Demon Slayer ranks during the Sengoku era, after Michikatsu joined Muzan by transforming into the demon Kokushibo. Now, we know that Kokushibo values legacy, since he was pleased to see that his bloodline had continued, and culminated in a powerful swordsman in the form of the Mist Hashira Muichiro. So, in our alternative version of events, Michikatsu takes on a disciple, after he becomes a Hashira, and is able to pass down moon breathing to the next generation. Just like Kokushibo perfected the 16 forms of moon breathing during his 5 centuries as a demon, the lineage of Moon Hashira adds new forms to the technique. By the Taisho era, it's the strongest variation of total concentration breathing within the Demon Slayer core. But how does Tanjiro learn moon breathing? Well, this time, Urokodaki Sakonji has become a master of moon breathing instead of water. Urokodaki Sensei teaches Tanjiro total concentration breathing and trains him in the various forms of moon breathing. Now, this is where things get interesting, because Tanjiro will turn up at the final selection with a stronger breathing technique than in the original timeline. Tanjiro's initial challenges like the Hand Demon, Susumaru, and Yahaba, or Kyogai will be far less threatening, leading to quicker wins for our protagonist. The first major change occurs in Tanjiro's fight against the Lower Moon 5 Rui. This battle was the catalyst for him to awaken the potential of the Hinokami Kagura as a sword-fighting tool. However, the irregular crescent cuts of the moon-breathing technique are already sufficient to handle Rui's webs. Even though Tanjiro is pushed to his limits, he teams up with Nezuko and holds off Rui until Giyu turns up. So, when does Tanjiro awaken his sun-breathing? The critical moment would come in the battle against Lower Moon 1 Enmu, when moon-breathing fails to cut through the demon's neck bone. Realizing that Zenitsu, Nezuko, and Kyojuro would be overwhelmed by Enmu soon, Tanjiro frantically unleashes moon-breathing forms upon the demon. In this moment of desperation, Tanjiro recalls the strength that his father generated using the Hinokami Kagura. With nothing to lose and his comrades' lives on the line, Tanjiro uses the Hinokami Kagura to add power to his strikes, unknowingly executing the sun-breathing form, Clear Blue Sky. Despite his newfound abilities, Tanjiro still takes too much damage during the battle on the Mugen train. Thus, he's unable to help out Kyojuro in his battle against Akaza, and the Flame Pillar dies at the hands of the Upper Moon 3. After recovering from his injuries, Tanjiro thinks back to the time he used the Hinokami Kagura on Enmu. What if he could combine it with his moon breathing to enhance its many forms? But now you might be wondering, if breathing styles can be combined, why didn't Tanjiro just combine sun and water breathing? Well, we get an explanation for this when Tanjiro reveals that the flexible water breathing, characterized by flowing and adapting, is not suited to his body. However, moon breathing is far more closely related to sun breathing, and was also created from within the Tsukikuni family. This means that Tanjiro is not only able to unearth the sun breathing forms with ease, but also manages to blend it with his existing repertoire of moon breathing slashes. The importance of this becomes evident in the Entertainment District arc, when the Demon Slayers take on the Upper Moon 6, Gyutaro and Daki. Tanjiro's erratic crescent slashes cut in all directions, easily slicing through Daki's obi and helping him get close to the demon. Once Nezuko joins the battle with her powerful kicks and burning blood, the Demon Slayers begin to overwhelm Daki even without Tengen's support. But the real challenge comes when Gyutaro emerges to save his sister from the Sound Hashira. Because moon breathing allows Tanjiro to handle omnidirectional attacks, he only needs Zenitsu and Nezuko's support to take care of Daki. This means that Inosuke will be the one accompanying Tengen in the fight against Gyutaro, and he won't have to abandon the Hashira to save the others like Tanjiro had to in the original timeline, with Zenitsu unlocking his potential even further with his Thunderclap and Flash Godspeed. Both he and Tanjiro manage to break through Daki's defenses. Since Tengen is never left alone, he won't lose his arm and eye, but both the Sound Hashira and Inosuke will be poisoned by Gyutaro. However, their poison resistance allows the two swordsmen to fight on, with Tengen finally reading Gyutaro's attacks with his technique, musical score. While Tanjiro senses the opening thread and unleashes the Hinokami Kagura for a mighty slash through Daki's neck, Gyutaro and Inosuke pounce on a cornered Gyutaro to sever his head at the same time. After the Entertainment District battle, Tanjiro's dual breathing techniques catch the attention of the Hashira, and word reaches Kagaya Ubuyashiki about this unique swordsman who can wield both sun and moon breathing. More importantly, Tengen survives with fewer injuries, and contributes later on during the Infinity Castle arc. But before that, we go to Swordsmith Village, where Tanjiro is sent to retrieve his repaired sword from Hagan Nezuko. In the battle against Tantengu, Tanjiro's combined breathing techniques truly shine. When faced with the Upper Moon 4's emotional clones, Tanjiro's moon breathing gives him a perfect counter. The precise, crescent-shaped slashes allow him to anticipate and cut through the multiple manifestations of Hantengu's emotions. But the real difference comes when Tanjiro encounters Zohakuten, the combined form of all of Hantengu's emotions. In the original timeline, this powerful demon nearly overwhelmed Tanjiro, Nezuko, Genya, and the love Hashira Mitsuri Kanroji. However, by this point, Tanjiro has mastered the circumstances over which he uses his dual breathing forms. With Moon Breathing's scope of attack and Sun Breathing's unstoppable power, Tanjiro is able to adapt to virtually any attack. After the Swordsmith Village victory, where both Hantengu and Gyoko are killed by the Demon Slayers, Kagaya Ubuyashiki summons all the Hashira for an emergency meeting. He reveals that the time has come for the Demon Slayers to seriously consider taking the offensive against Kibutsuji Muzan, kicking off the Hashira training arc. Tanjiro trains directly under Gyomei Himejima, the Stone Hashira and strongest Demon Slayer. Recognizing the similarities between Stone Breathing's stability and Moon Breathing's precision, Gyomei helps Tanjiro refine his techniques. By the time Muzan launches his assault on the Ubuyashiki estate, Tanjiro has nearly reached Hashira level strength. When the Infinity Castle battle begins, it's the sound Hashira Tengen who teams up with Giyu to confront Upper Moon 3 Akaza. Tanjiro initially lands among a group of weaker demons by himself, but as he fights his way out, he meets Muichiro and the two work together to try and make sense of the castle. As they clear room after room, Nakime's demon blood art suddenly transports the two to a room with a mysterious sword-wielding demon, who locks them in a petrifying gaze with his 6 eyes. The Upper Moon 1 Kokushibo's horrifying aura locks both the demon slayers in place. As he observes them closely, Kokushibo realizes that Muichiro is his descendant and laments the death of the Tsugikuni name. Tanjiro and Muichiro strengthen their resolve and charge the demon at once with their breathing styles. Kokushibo is in for another pleasant surprise when he sees Tanjiro using moon breathing, and he immediately recognizes it as his own creation. Even though the two demon slayers are among the most talented in the Corps, they cannot keep up with Kokushibo. Enhanced by his demonic powers, Kokushibo's moon breathing far surpasses Tanjiro's, and the demon slayers are pushed back by his onslaught. While neither Muichiro nor Tanjiro suffer grievous injuries, they begin bleeding profusely as they struggle to defend against Kokushibo's relentless slashes. While Genya and Sanemi appear on the scene shortly afterward, Kokushibo is quick to immobilize Genya and holds off Sanemi as well. At this moment, Tanjiro realizes that moon breathing won't get him anywhere against the technique's creator, and switches to sun breathing. Seeing this change, the Upper Moon is genuinely shaken. For the first time in centuries, Kokushibo faces someone who wields both the technique he created and the technique he could never master. This moment of recognition causes the Upper Moon 1 to hesitate briefly, allowing Muichiro to finally land a strike on him. Enraged by the attack, Kokushibo unleashes Moon Breathing, 3rd form, Loathsome Moon Chains, on the Demon Slayers, but Gyomei arrives just in time to intercept the attack. The combined efforts of Tanjiro, Muichiro, Gyomei, and Sanemi occupy Kokushibo more than in the original timeline, and Genya is able to land his Blood Demon art on Kokushibo far more easily. As the Demon Slayers unite to behead Kokushibo, while simultaneously destroying his body, the Upper Moon 1 recognizes Tanjiro as the true inheritor of the Tsugikuni family's fighting styles. Tanjiro now possesses a complete mastery of both sun and moon breathing, along with access to his Demon Slayer mark and the Selfless State. As the Demon Slayers now move to take on Muzan, Tanjiro unleashes his ultimate combined technique, Celestial Convergence, a form where sun and moon breathing completely harmonize. With the memories of the Demon Slayers who died fresh in his mind, Tanjiro's grip turns his sword bright red. In the name of giving meaning to the deaths of Gyomei, Mitsuri, Obanai, and everyone else, Tanjiro viciously decapitates Muzan alongside Sanemi and Giyu. As the sun rises and Muzan begins to disintegrate, the Demon Slayers collapse from their injuries and exhaustion. The age of demonic terror is over, and it's humanity's time to thrive without fear. So what do you think about this alternate version of events? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more Demon Slayer fan theory. Starting with Orokudaki Sakonji, Tanjiro has learned under many mentors during his journey as a demon slayer. But what if his teacher was somebody completely different? Someone who operated in the shadows and fought for the forces of evil? In today's video, we'll take a look at what would happen if Tanjiro was raised by the highest-ranking demon among the 12 moons, Kokushibo. As outlandish as it may sound, it's not too hard to imagine how this might happen. One night, as Kokushibo is wandering through the woods, he comes across a frail coal burner dancing surrounded by torches. The demon is fascinated by the man and settles down to watch him for a bit before he strikes. As he lies hidden, Kokushibo notices something familiar about the man. His movements follow the same patterns that Yoriichi demonstrated 500 years ago when he practiced the 12 forms of sun breathing. He's wearing the same Hanafuda earrings that Yoriichi wore all those years ago. Now thoroughly interested, Kokushibo homes in on Tanjiro's lungs and realizes this human is using a breathing technique. There's no doubt in his mind. The sun breathing technique is not dead and has been passed down in the form of the Hinokami Kagura. But from this point onward, Kokushibo keeps an eye out for the Kamado family. Are they the descendants of his brother's bloodline? That had to be impossible, as Uta was the only woman Yoriichi ever loved, and he lived in solitude after her death. The Kamado family could not be demon slayers either, since Kokushibo knew that sun breathing was not preserved among the Hashira. Before Kokushibo can confront Tanjiro and solve this mystery, disaster strikes when he's not around. The family is attacked by demons, and all members except for the eldest son, Tanjiro, are killed. Kokushibo knows that he should not intervene. It's not what Muzan would want him to do. But as we've seen with the example of Lady Tamayo, some powerful demons can go against the Demon King's wishes. Even though Kokushibo is one of Kibutsuji Muzan's most loyal lieutenants, he believes deeply in legacy. This is evidenced in the warmth that he shows toward Muichiro when he learns that the Mist Hashira is his descendant. When he understands that the sun breathing that Yoriichi worked so hard to perfect still lives and might die with the boy unless he intervenes, Kokushibo cannot help himself. He takes Tanjiro under his wing and vows to train the boy to surpass human limits and potentially become a demon in the future. But why would the Upper Moon 1 train a human swordsman that could potentially become a demon slayer? Once again, you need only to look at Kokushibo's personality. This demon values strength, skill, and perfection in combat above all else. Kokushibo even spares Akaza after beating him in battle because he loves the challenge. So the prospect of preserving his brother's legacy and creating a disciple with unparalleled strength would motivate Kokushibo to raise Tanjiro and train him as a swordsman. But this brings us to Tanjiro's perspective. How would he feel about being raised by a demon? Now, it's entirely possible that Kokushibo never reveals the truth about his family's death to Tanjiro. However, even if Tanjiro finds out what happened, Kokushibo can always distinguish himself from regular demons. Compared to your regular demons, Kokushibo is a regal and imposing figure with an aura of mystery about him. He holds nothing but disdain for the lower classes of demons, and would probably be alright with Tanjiro killing them for practice. So with that, this strange relationship between Tanjiro and Kokushibo begins. The Upper Moon 1 is as far as you can get from a loving and empathetic father figure, but despite being strict and emotionally unavailable, he's never cruel or unreasonably harsh toward Tanjiro. As the creator of the legendary moon breathing technique, he trains Tanjiro in its various forms. Half a millennium of training and his supernatural abilities as a demon make Kokushibo the ultimate master. No mistake goes unnoticed by the Upper Moon 1, and he has the knowledge and mastery to correct these errors as well. Using his ability to access the transparent world, he adapts each stage of the moon breathing technique to suit Tanjiro's body. Tanjiro often questions Kokushibo's monstrous form, but he never gets a straight answer. He only learns that Kokushibo sacrificed everything in the pursuit of power and perfection. Even though Kokushibo wants to transform Tanjiro into a demon, he knows that now is not the time. He wants the boy to reach the limits of his improvement as a human first, before unlocking the next level of supernatural abilities that being a demon grants. As Tanjiro matures as a swordsman, he begins hunting demons, not as a duty or in pursuit of vengeance, but simply to test his growing skills. As he encounters more powerful enemies, Tanjiro is pushed beyond his regular capabilities, leading him to discover the Hinokami Kagura from within his core memories. He brings this new discovery to Kokushibo and asks for his master's guidance. Using Tanjiro's memories of his father and Kokushibo's memories of his brother Yoriichi, the master and disciple begin piecing together the sun-breathing forms. This new project inspires Kokushibo even further to model Tanjiro in Yoriichi's image. He teaches his student to access the transparent world, giving Tanjiro the capability to sense the weakness of even the most fearsome demons. Tanjiro continues to grow as a swordsman, now alternating between sun and moon breathing based on what the situation demands. Eventually, the Demon Slayer Corps finds evidence of Tanjiro's little adventures. They cannot comprehend the reports they get from the crows about how a regular human being is causing so much death and destruction among the demons. The Hashira are tasked with tracking down the mysterious swordsman in the woods. Tomioka Giyu is the first to find Tanjiro and confront him. The two engage him in battle and realize that they're closely matched. Giyu understands that Tanjiro could be an asset to the Demon Slayers and stops the fight. The two talk for a while, and as Tanjiro tells the story of his family and his new guardian, Giyu realizes that Tanjiro's master is none other than Kokushibo. He explains to Tanjiro that Kokushibo is one of the most vicious demons to ever exist, and a sworn enemy of humanity. Tanjiro struggles with Giyu's revelation as he realizes the mentor who raised him is responsible for countless human deaths, yet he cannot deny the bond they've formed. Now, Tanjiro has a difficult choice ahead of him. Does he prioritize his humanity and join the Demon Slayers, or return to his master out of loyalty? In the meantime, Muzan also receives word of a human who hunts demons, and uses the moon-breathing technique. He connects the dots and summons Kokushibo to the Infinity Castle to interrogate him. Seething with rage, Muzan tells Kokushibo that his actions are nothing short of treason against the Demon King. He gives the Upper Moon 1 two options: either die at Muzan's hands, or undo his sins by killing Tanjiro himself. Kokushibo stands before Muzan, his loyalty tested like never before. For the first time in centuries, the Upper Moon 1 feels conflicted. Training Tanjiro rekindled the connection to his human past and his brother's legacy. He cannot discard the child as yet another worthless human life. That night, Tanjiro does not return to his training grounds. Kokushibo deduces that his disciple has learned the truth as well. Refusing to wait any longer, Muzan orders the Upper Moons to find and execute Tanjiro. He cannot risk allowing Tanjiro's mastery of sun and moon breathing to grow any further. As Muzan launches his attack, the showdown takes a similar form to the Battle of Infinity Castle in the original storyline. The Hashira split various targets among themselves and attempt to bring down the demons. However, Tanjiro's training under Kokushibo makes a world of difference in this timeline. The fights against Gyutaro and Daki, or Hantengu's many forms, are nowhere near as devastating. Tanjiro is only truly pushed to his limits when he goes up against Akaza. The third Upper Moon uses his extensive knowledge of martial arts to keep Tanjiro at bay, landing non-fatal blows and slowly sapping away his strength. In a moment of desperation, with death looming in front of him, Tanjiro finds another level of power within himself and unlocks his Demon Slayer mark. The red mark spread across his forehead and chin, much like his master's. With his sword turning bright red and the other Hashira coming in to support him, Tanjiro manages to behead Akaza as well. And with that, only the Upper Moon 1 remain to challenge Tanjiro and the remaining Hashira. As he stands before his student, Kokushibo reveals the complete truth, his identity as Michikatsu, and how his jealousy of Yoriichi led him down this dark path. In their final confrontation, Tanjiro combines both sun and moon breathing styles into something entirely new. He's supported by the Demon Slayers, but neither Tanjiro nor Kokushibo are affected by their presence. Unlike the original timeline, Kokushibo's swordsmanship comes as no surprise. Every one of those forms has been drilled into Tanjiro's muscle memory as well. The student and master engage in an intense showdown, with neither truly wanting to kill the other. However, as they fight, dusk gradually turns to dawn, and the rays from the sun weaken Kokushibo, making him falter. Before the Upper Moon 1 can retreat, Tanjiro steps in and lands a decisive blow. As Kokushibo falls, mortally wounded, he smiles, seeing in Tanjiro what could have been had he and his brother worked together instead of apart. With his dying breath, Kokushibo entrusts him with the original aspirations of the Tsugikuni brothers. Finish what we started, defeat Muzan. Tanjiro stands, tears streaming down his face, now wielding the knowledge and power of two opposing legacies. He vows to honor both his families, the one he lost and the one who raised him, by bringing an end to the Demon King once and for all. In today's video, we'll explore how the Demon Slayer universe would change if both Tanjiro and Nezuko were turned into demons. It's not hard to imagine the setup for this timeline either. Instead of being out collecting wood, Tanjiro is also at home when Muzan turns up at the Kamado household. What ensues is a massacre that ends with Tanjiro's parents and siblings being brutally mauled by Muzan. However, his hatred for the symbolic Hanafuda earrings leads Muzan to decide that death is too merciful a fate for the Kamado family. The Demon King lets Tanjiro and Nezuko survive, but infuses them with his blood to transform them into demons instead. It's a capricious decision that makes him feel like he has tamed sun-breathing, a decision that might come back to haunt him later on. Muzan leaves the household without bothering to see if Tanjiro and Nezuko survive the transformation process. Shortly afterwards, Giyu arrives at the scene, only to see that it's too late for him to do anything. Now if the siblings had any life in them, and tried to take on the Water Hashira, we could end our video right here, because there's no way Giyu is letting two newborn demons live. However, the transformation has not started yet, and Giyu only senses a weak life force from Tanjiro and Nezuko. Deciding that there's nothing he can do for them, the Water Hashira alerts the Demon Slayer Corps and leaves the area. However, when the Kakashi Brigade turns up at the scene, they realize that two bodies are missing. Unbeknownst to the Demon Slayer Corps, Tanjiro had transformed into a demon first and taken his sister into the forest for their safety. Through the examples of Tamayo and Yushiro, who we'll encounter a bit later in this video, we know that some demons can retain their human emotions even after transforming, especially if they were forced to. In Tanjiro's case, he came from a loving family and had no resentment against the world. Nezuko and Tanjiro's affection for each other still stays strong, but they both develop a strong hatred toward the Demon King for killing the rest of their family. Lost in the forest with an uncontrollable bloodlust, the Kamado siblings try to survive by eating wild animals, but they remain unsatisfied. Nezuko and Tanjiro make their way through the woods and eventually reach the outskirts of Tokyo's Akasuka district, where Tamayo begins to detect a strange demonic presence. She sees two demons traveling together, and strangely, she doesn't sense any murderous intent from them. Tamayo sends out Yushiro to scout out the siblings and bring them back to her secret lair, thinking this could be a valuable opportunity to further her research. Tamayo is amazed to see that Tanjiro and Nezuko have still managed to retain their bond as siblings, while also avoiding killing any humans. She decides to take them under her wing just like Yushiro and feed the two siblings with human blood from willing donors. Muzan soon learns that Kamado's siblings did not travel down the path of bloodshed like he intended, and have instead joined forces with his sworn enemy, Tamayo. Enraged that he was unable to bring the Sun Breathers under his control, Muzan tasks Susumaru and Yahaba with hunting down Tanjiro and Nezuko for the crime of not conforming to the Demon King's will. Now, just like in the original storyline, Susumaru identifies Tanjiro by his Hanafuda earrings, and launches an attack on him and Nezuko. Supported by Tamayo and Yushiro, the two take on Susumaru and their newfound demonic strength. Tanjiro and Nezuko don't hold back at all in the battle, and even show signs of performing blood demon arts, showing Tamayo that they have great potential as demon slayers. After Susumaru and Yahaba are defeated, Tamayo sends a message to Ubuyashiki Kaguya, alerting him that she has discovered a pair of interesting demons who might hold the key to defeating Muzan. Much to Yushiro's disappointment, she also decides to train the Kamado siblings personally, and help them develop their blood demon art so they can be even more useful in battle. But let's take a step back from Tanjiro and Nezuko for now, and see how them becoming demons would affect the rest of our characters. During the final selection, only Genya, Kanao, Inosuke, and Zenitsu join the Demon Slayer Corps, and the Hand Demon lives to consume even more of Urokudaki students. Now, each Demon Slayer from the final selection will likely take their own path, but Zenitsu and Inosuke cross paths once again, when they're sent to investigate Kyogai's mansion. Even though Kyugai is a fearsome adversary, Inosuke would challenge him head-on, while Zenitsu gets knocked unconscious, allowing him to take out the drum demon with his thunder breathing. During the Mount Nagatumo arc, Genya and Kanao are assigned to the mission since Tanjiro is not yet part of the Demon Slayers. Together with Inosuke, they manage to take out most of the Spider family, but the real challenge comes when they finally go up against Rui. The Lower Moon takes on all three of the Demon Slayers at once, but they're soon overwhelmed. That is, of course, until Genya manages to take a bite out of Rui, and gains the strength to level the playing field long enough for Gyu to turn up and take out the Spider Demon. However, things get troublesome during the Mugen train arc, as Tanjiro was the one who managed to cut through Enmu's neck with his sun breathing. Rengoku is likely to find a way to defeat the Lower Moon one, but in this timeline, there are far more civilian casualties, and Inosuke and Zenitsu are severely injured. When Akaza turns up at the scene, he encounters a battered and bruised Kyojiro who is unable to put up much resistance as he originally did. Thus, the demon is not instilled with the same sense of fear after his battle against the Flame Hashira. Moving on to the Entertainment District arc, Kanao is dragged along by Tengen as the third Demon Slayer who assists his investigation. Her sharp instincts and subtle approach uncover Daki's presence much faster, allowing Tengen to plan a decisive attack. But even though the Sound Hashira manages to take out Daki, Gyutaro's emergence changes things completely. Inosuke's brute force and Kanao's precision help them outclass Daki, while Tengen and Zenitsu try to overwhelm Gyutaro with their speed. Even though the Demon Slayers beat the Upper Moon 6, they're missing something crucial: Nezuko's blood demon art. Unable to burn away Gyutaro's poison, Tengen succumbs to his injuries at the end of the battle. Over at Swordsmith Village, Gyoko and Hantengu execute their plan to wipe out the Demon Slayer's weapon supply. Without Tanjiro and Nezuko, only Genya, Mitsuri, and Muichiro are present to defend the civilians from this attack. Now, Muichiro, being the lone wolf that he is, will still likely be able to defeat Gyoko on his own, by awakening his Demon Slayer mark during their battle. However, Mitsuri will not be so fortunate against Hantengu. The Upper Moon 4's multiple forms will attack her and Genya from all sides, and despite her durability, the Love Hashira will be feeling the damage. Once Zohakuten emerges, Mitsuri is pushed to her limits, and awakens her Demon Slayer mark. She engages Hantengu's strongest form by herself, and sends Genya to behead the main body as soon as he can. Since he has consumed the flesh of the Upper Moon 4, Genya manages to keep up his relentless pursuit of Hantengu until dawn, and catches the demon with a shot from his pistols right as the sun rises. Hantengu desperately tries to hang on to his life, but is burned away by the sun. However, Mitsuri did not fare so well against Kohakuten. With no one to help her, the love Hashira barely managed to hold off Kohakuten until dawn, but her stamina eventually ran out, allowing the demon to land a fatal blow. Before he could turn his attention to the village, Kohakuten was also wiped out by Hantengu's death. Back underground, Tamayo's training bears fruit. Tanjiro and Nezuko both develop their blood demon arts and gain strength almost on par with an upper moon. Once they're ready, Tamayo sends the siblings out to intercept demon attacks across Japan, adding to their notoriety among the demon slayers. Following the events at Swordsmith Village, Ubuyashiki Kagaya decides that the demon slayers need all the help they can get, and enlists Tanjiro and Nezuko into his forces. During the Hashira training arc, the two siblings train alongside the demon slayers, but are not exposed to the lower-ranking members. Instead, they battle exclusively against Genya and the Hashira, honing their demonic powers even further. The events of the Infinity Castle arc unfold as they did before, with Tanjiro and Nezuko joining the battle alongside the demon slayers. Tanjiro and Giyu battle Akaza together, but this time, Tanjiro's blood demon art makes him an even more formidable opponent. He matches Akaza's strength, creating openings for Giyu to attack the Upper Moon 3. As the Upper Moon falls, Muzan watches with disdain. His rage extends to both the demon slayers for challenging him, and the Upper Moons for being weak enough to die at their hands. As the anti-Muzan drug eats away at him, Muzan faces off against the demon slayers, fending off their attacks and injuring anyone who gets too close. It's at this moment that Tanjiro reveals his secret weapon that he saved just for the Demon King, the Hinokami Kagura. Tanjiro's memories allowed him to perform sun-breathing techniques, and he perfected its form while training under Tamayo. Terrified by the image of Yoriichi that he sees in Tanjiro, Muzan is backed into a corner and is finally overwhelmed by the demon slayers. As the sun rises, he's burned away once and for all, ending in a victory for humanity. But what happens to Tanjiro and Nezuko now that the Demon King is dead? This was all planned ahead, and members of the Kakushi run in to inject them with the same demon-to-human drug used to defeat Muzan. The transformation is painful and slow, but the siblings are both transformed back into humans. Even though they've lost their powers, Tanjiro and Nezuko regain their humanity, as their lives finally return back to normal. What do you think of this timeline? Is it better than the original? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Born during the Sengoku era, Tsukikuni Yoriichi was the greatest demon slayer to have ever lived, and the only swordsman the Demon King Muzan feared. But what if Yoriichi fought in the Taisho era instead, and actually became Tanjiro's father? Today, we'll explore a crazy alternate universe where Yoriichi and Tanjiro become an insanely powerful father-son duo. Now, for our story to begin, we need to understand how removing Yoriichi from the Sengoku era affects the Demon Slayer's history. Now, the core will still exist, as Kibutsuji Muzan's transformation into the king of all demons will still curse the Ubuyashiki family line. In order to lift the curse and clear the family name, the noble family devotes all their resources to creating an elite militia to wipe out all demons. However, the golden era of demon slayers that we hear about in the original timeline doesn't happen in the Sengoku era, and the world doesn't see sun breathing for another 500 years. But does this mean that breathing styles don't exist at all? That certainly isn't the case, because we already know characters who developed unique breathing techniques on their own. Think of Inosuke, for example. He invented beast breathing without a master, simply by learning how to survive in the forest. This means that some demon slayers will develop breathing styles, but none as advanced as the total concentration breathing we see in the series. They will also develop key weapons like Nichirin blades and Wisteria poison, meaning that demon slayers who fight like Shinobu, relying on poison and precision more than power, will actually become more common in our alternate timeline. But we also know that you don't need any of these to kill weaker demons, seeing how both Sanemi and Gyomei managed to kill demons with their bare hands before even learning how to hold a weapon. This means that while the demon slayers will be much weaker, they certainly won't be totally helpless. However, Muzan won't pay too much attention to them, as the swordsmen just aren't capable of posing a threat to even the weakest of the 12 Kizuki. Speaking of the demon moons, another key difference is that Yoriichi's twin, Michikatsu, will not be born in the Sengoku era either, meaning that we probably won't have the Upper Moon one Kokushibo in this version of events. And now we find ourselves in the Taisho era, where Yoriichi is born about 40 years before the timeline we know of. Just like in the original timeline, Yoriichi is a demon-slaying prodigy, and already has access to the transparent world and selfless state as a child. Since he's born with the Demon Slayer mark, Yoriichi is also more physically powerful than the average person, letting him take on more experienced opponents and beat them with ease. But his greatest fear comes when he invents the sun-breathing style, along with the concept of total concentration breathing. This results in the creation of the 5 fundamental breathing styles, and allows demon slayers to unlock their fullest potential. Kuwaji Mojigoro, Sakonji Urokudaki, and Rengoku Shinjiro fight alongside Yoriichi at first, taking their places among the Hashira as the Thunder, Water, and Flame pillars respectively. Desperate to keep up with his twin brother, Michikatsu also tries to learn sun breathing, but ends up developing his own style, moon breathing instead. While he never matches Yoriichi's power, Michikatsu quickly becomes the second most powerful demon slayer in the Corps. Now let's fast forward our story by about 15 years, because most of it follows the original timeline. Jigoro, Urokudaki, and Shinjiro all have retired and been replaced by their successors, while Sanemi and Gyomei join the ranks of the Hashira to complete the 5 fundamental breathing styles. Meanwhile, Michikatsu gives up on trying to match his brother through training alone, and becomes the demon Kokushibo, in hopes of growing exponentially stronger. Yoriichi has his landmark encounter against Muzan and absolutely destroys the Demon King, forcing him to split into hundreds of tiny pieces and go into hiding for over a decade. During this time of relative peace, Yoriichi falls in love with a young girl from a family of coal burners named Kie. In this timeline, instead of marrying Kamado Tanjiro, Kie settles down and raises a family with Yoriichi, who retires to live a peaceful life with his family. While he enjoys this peaceful life, Yoriichi knows that the Demon King won't be gone forever, and he decides to train his eldest son, Tanjiro, to be the successor of the sun-breathing style. Now, in this version of events, Tanjiro's childhood is drastically different. He never has any trouble with demons, as the world's strongest demon slayer is guarding Tanjiro and his siblings 24/7. Because of this, the family is never attacked, and Nezuko remains human. Furthermore, instead of watching his dad perform the Hinokami Kagura, Tanjiro actually learns sun breathing from the source, mastering its forms from early childhood onwards. Tanjiro also learns about demons from a very young age, and is always aware of the dangers that come with nightfall. By the time he turns 13, Yoriichi decides that Tanjiro is ready and sends him off to participate in the final selection. This time, the likes of the Hand Demon are barely enough to make Tanjiro break a sweat, and he actually sets a new record by killing dozens of demons in the course of one night. But this incredible power does not change who Tanjiro really is, a kind and empathetic soul who still believes that even demons deserve a shot at redemption. So how does the story as we know it change after Tanjiro becomes a demon slayer? Nezuko not being a demon changes everything, as he will not run into Tamayo or have any problems with the Hashira at the start of his journey. Instead, the Hashira actually treat him with respect, as he's the successor of the sun-breathing style. However, Tanjiro is not granted a seat among the upper ranks for free, and still has to earn it the hard way. Tanjiro heads out with Inosuke and Zenitsu by his side, just like the original timeline. However, their dynamic is completely different. Zenitsu doesn't have Nezuko to fawn over the entire time, and Inosuke doesn't challenge Tanjiro incessantly, as he senses the gap in their skill levels. However, he always strives to grow stronger, hoping to be tough enough to challenge Tanjiro someday. The Drum Demon doesn't give Tanjiro too much trouble either, and his first real challenge comes against the Lower Moon 5, Rui. The Spider Demon's webs are just complex enough to trip Tanjiro up, and without Nezuko's exploding blood to save him this time, Tanjiro finds himself on the back foot. But once he calms down, Tanjiro is able to compose himself and use the sun-breathing second form, Clear Blue Sky, to cut through Rui's webs and close the distance between himself and the demon. While Tanjiro's new strength is enough for him to cut through Rui's neck and successfully beat the Lower Moon before Giyu gets there, this battle leads to a realization. Tanjiro is nowhere near as strong as he needs to be. Yoriichi had already taught him how the upper moons were ridiculously powerful compared to the lower moons, and how Muzan towered above all of them. If he struggled so much against Rui, there's no way Tanjiro would survive against the likes of Kokushibo, who he'll actually see a bit later on in the story. And while Tanjiro is promoted to the rank of Hashira for single-handedly taking down one of the 12 Kizuki, he's unable to celebrate, thinking only of his own weakness and what it would take to beat Muzan. A couple of years pass, and Tanjiro has grown into a formidable Hashira, but the weight of expectation continues to burden him. The turning point comes when Muzan finally emerges from his decades-long hiding. The Demon King has spent this time not just recovering, but evolving. He's learned from his humiliating defeat at Yoriichi's hands, and sun-breathing alone will not be enough to stop him this time. But what's even worse is that since Nezuko never turned into a demon, they never established a close relationship with Tamayo. This means that while poisons exist, the anti-Muzan drug is nowhere near as powerful as it was in the original timeline. When Nakime's biwa rings across Japan, transporting the Hashira into the Infinity Castle, the Demon Slayers find themselves scattered across a twisted realm. Tanjiro, alongside the Water Hashira Giyu, finds himself in a vast chamber where they face off against Akaza, the Upper Moon 3. The battle is intense, as Akaza's martial arts prowess and regenerative abilities push both Tanjiro and Giyu to their limits. Working together, they manage to defeat Akaza, but both are severely wounded. As they struggle to find the others, they hear the sound of an epic battle echoing through the castle. Meanwhile, in another part of the Infinity Castle, Yoriichi faces his brother Michikatsu, now the demon Kokushibo. The two haven't seen each other since that fateful night many years ago, when Michikatsu chose to become a demon. Years without practice have dulled Yoriichi's skills, while Kokushibo grew exponentially stronger as a demon. Yoriichi's movements, while still incredibly skilled, lacked the overwhelming power they once possessed. However, Kokushibo is still unsure of himself, and fears what his brother might do if he gets an opening. He didn't need to worry too much though, as that moment of self-doubt was all that Yoriichi needed. In a split second, he unleashes the 13th form of sun breathing, not only beheading Kokushibo, but also landing 11 more deadly slashes that prevent him from regenerating. As the Infinity Castle begins to collapse with Nakime's defeat, Tanjiro finds Yoriichi in the ruins. Despite his injuries, Yoriichi insists on standing with his son for the final confrontation. As they emerge from the castle ruins, they find Muzan waiting, his form more terrifying than ever. The Demon King has absorbed the essence of all the demons he's created over the millennia. Muzan sneers. Perfect. I can end the Tsugikuni bloodline once and for all. The battle is brutal, as every form that Yoriichi and Tanjiro attempt is met with a perfect counter, as if Muzan has spent centuries preparing for this exact moment. However, with the support of the other Hashira, they're able to keep Muzan occupied. He wasn't taking enough damage to die, but he was also too occupied to counterattack or run away. Muzan realizes too late what's happening. He's been preparing to counter sun breathing as an offensive technique, but the Tsugikuni family transformed it into something entirely different, a beacon that amplifies the power of everyone fighting beside them. As the sun rises over the battlefield, Yoriichi collapses into Tanjiro's arms. The legendary swordsman is finally succumbing to the Demon Slayer Mark's curse, but his face is peaceful. So do you think Yoriichi did a great job as Tanjiro's father? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another awesome Demon Slayer theory. Kamado Tanjiro ticks every box of the shonen hero archetype. He's pure-hearted and heroic, putting his life on the line to save the weak and vulnerable. But what if things were different? What if Tanjiro fought for the forces of evil instead of joining the Demon Slayers? In today's video, we'll be exploring a popular fan theory from the Demon Slayer anime. What if Tanjiro was raised by Kibutsuji Muzan? Muzan's motivation for killing the Kamado family was basically just centuries of repressed trauma from his encounter with Yoriichi, where the legendary Demon Slayer effortlessly slashed through Muzan's 7 hearts and 5 brains. However, if the king of all demons set aside his fear for a moment, he would realize that the Hanafuda earrings represent not just a threat, but an opportunity as well. Eliminating the possibility of facing another sun breather is great, but adding a demon with that ability to his own forces is twice as effective. Furthermore, taming the Kamado lineage would also help Muzan overcome his physiological vulnerability to sun breathing. Before we go down this rabbit hole, a few details of the Demon Slayer universe need to be changed for the theory to work. First, Muzan must kill the Kamado family far earlier than the original Demon Slayer timeline. Even though Tanjiro's life is far from luxurious, this family of coal burners have a pretty loving and wholesome household, unlike other backgrounds that gave rise to demons like Gyutaro. If Tanjiro is old enough to understand that his family was murdered by demons, there's no way he ends up joining them. This also means that our alternate reality does not involve Nezuko, as she's not been born yet. The second condition is that Muzan himself cannot attack the Kamado household. We know that members of the Kamado lineage have incredible memory based on how they preserve the art of sun breathing, even though Sumiyoshi Kamado only witnessed it for an instant. We'll explore the Hinokami Kagura a bit later in this video, but it's easy to believe that the memory of his parents' death would surely be burned into Tanjiro's mind. As we see in the series, Tanjiro's keen sense of smell means that he would be able to smell Muzan's involvement and remember the scent. This means Muzan would probably have to send one of the lower moons to wipe out the family and critically injure Tanjiro before he visits the Kamado household and saves Tanjiro's life by turning him into a demon. Now, this is where things get interesting, because it's hard to imagine Tanjiro being driven by hate, arrogance, or envy like other demons. So if trauma and rage are not on the table, what other option does Muzan have to keep Tanjiro fighting for the demons? We know that Muzan is a master manipulator that can easily toy with his subjects' emotions. So in Tanjiro's case, he would need to use these skills to groom our protagonist. Muzan could push Tanjiro to become a powerful demon by motivating him to find justice for his family. We've already seen through the examples of Rui, Akaza, or Gyutaro and Daki that familial ties can fuel demonic strength. This fan theory depends as much on Tanjiro's naivety as it does on Muzan's skills as a master manipulator. Imagine a world where Muzan exploits Tanjiro's natural tendency to protect the vulnerable. He could easily go further to convince Tanjiro that demons are a weak and vulnerable race doomed to live in the shadows. While the Demon Slayers could be the violent oppressors in his narrative, if Muzan could somehow pin the Kamado family's destruction on the Demon Slayer core, it would complete Tanjiro's conversion to the demon side. This would not be too difficult as well, since Tanjiro already fought against Giyu even in the original series. So if Tanjiro sides with the demons and is raised personally by Muzan, he would end up being one of the Demon King's most loyal generals, and would probably reach the level of one of the upper moons after consuming more of Muzan's blood. Think about it, with his hardy skull and unbreakable spirit, Tanjiro is already an absolute unit of a human. But how would things change if he becomes a demon? Firstly, his physical training under Muzan would show a stark contrast to Sakonji Orokodaki's training approach. Muzan would teach Tanjiro to explore the limits of his new body and integrate the demon's healing factor into his fighting style. In addition to the normal speed and strength boosts that demons get, Muzan would definitely train Tanjiro to use blood demon arts. We see a wide range of techniques in the Demon Slayer universe, with effects ranging from poison and restraint to teleportation. However, Tanjiro's blood demon art would likely be something that complements his physical prowess, similar to Akaza's shockwaves. But the critical detail that makes Tanjiro a truly fearsome demon is his sun breathing. The young Tanjiro would have seen his father performing the Hinokami Kagura, allowing him to copy the technique. Because of Kokushibo's moon breathing, we know that demons can perform breathing techniques if these are learned while they're human. However, sun breathing is the original and most powerful breathing technique, meaning that if Tanjiro is trained in swordsmanship by Kokushibo, he could surpass the level of Upper Moon 1 if given enough time to perfect his craft. In addition to his strength, Tanjiro also possesses the ability to read people's emotions really well. Throughout the series, we see him getting through to characters like Kanao, and even empathizing with demons. Emotion tends to be a weak point for most demons, as they underestimate the Demon Slayer's resolve and fail to understand their motivation. However, a demon Tanjiro would convert this weakness into a strength. He would read the Demon Slayer's emotions and use their thoughts against them, exploiting each fighter's insecurities to throw them off their game. And this brings us to humanity's saviors, the Demon Slayers. Not only are they handicapped by not having Tanjiro on their side, but they also have to get through him to reach Muzan. While the Hashira are capable of posing a challenge to the Upper Moons by the end of the Hashira training arc, only Gyomei can reliably make it out of a fight alive. Furthermore, Tanjiro played a vital role in the defeat of Gyutaro and Han Tengu, meaning that the Demon Slayers would likely never reach the level we see in the series without his help. Now, you're probably listening to this theory and thinking it paints a pretty bleak picture for humanity, but there's one way the Demon Slayers can still gain an edge. That is to turn Tanjiro to their side. We've already discussed how Tanjiro doesn't really have the heart of a demon, as he would have experienced kindness throughout his human life. Furthermore, Nezuko shows us that a demon with compassion and love in her heart can retain its sanity and can even overcome the demon's weakness to sun. So what would it take to convince a demonic Tanjiro to join the Demon Slayers? Most demons are cruel and violent just for the sake of it, and it's easy to imagine that Tanjiro would be uncomfortable with his fellow demon's bloodlust. He would question their brutal murder of innocent humans for entertainment instead of sustenance. Furthermore, we've seen through the case of the drum demon Kyogai that some demons can simply grow tired of killing. Tanjiro's natural empathy may drive him to that stage much sooner. Tanjiro would also disagree with some of the philosophies of many of the Upper Moons, leading to tensions within the demon hierarchy, similar to Akaza's hatred for Doma. This creates an opportunity for the Demon Slayers to convert Tanjiro by appealing to his better nature. Of course, this is a risky move, and the execution depends on who approaches Tanjiro. A hothead like Sanemi would only make things worse by aggravating Tanjiro, while Giyu or Muichiro don't have the emotional intensity to move him. The ideal candidate would be someone like Kagaya Ubuyashiki, who could tactfully defend the Demon Slayer's cause. However, it's difficult to imagine a world where he comes into contact with a high-ranking demon. Then our best candidates for the job become either Gyomei or Rengoku. Gyomei's sensitivity, soft-spokenness, and immense strength are the perfect combination of traits to get through to Tanjiro. On the other hand, Rengoku's passion has moved tougher demons in the past, meaning that he should be able to persuade Tanjiro to change alliances if they ever battled each other. So ultimately, there are two ways this fan theory can go. First, Tanjiro becomes an Upper Moon, turning the demons into a more formidable threat, and assisting Muzan even further in his search for the Blue Spider Lily. A different Demon Slayer may rise up to the challenge in Tanjiro's absence, but from what we've seen in the series, that's pretty unlikely, as very few humans are even capable of passing the final selection. Then this reality culminates in the total annihilation of the Demon Slayer core, and the demons led by Kibutsuji Muzan taking over the world. Our other alternative is for Tanjiro to switch sides in a later stage of his demonhood, supporting the Demon Slayers in their fight against Muzan. This switch in allegiance would prove to be the tipping point in their battle, allowing the Demon Slayers to gain an upper hand against the Demon King. We can imagine Tanjiro playing a support role similar to what Genya does already. With his support, the Hashira would face the Upper Moons and Muzan at the Infinity Castle, and after significant losses, humanity prevails, finally ending the Demon King's reign of terror. So which of these endings do you like? What if Tanjiro never learned sun breathing, but instead became Kokushibo's student and mastered moon breathing? It's a crazy idea, right? But just imagine how much the story would change. Everything we know about Demon Slayer would flip on its head. New battles, unexpected alliances, and a completely different Tanjiro. Let's dive into how this alternate version of the story might start. So, we all know Kokushibo isn't your average demon. He's the Upper Moon 1, Muzan's right-hand man, and an absolute powerhouse. But he's also got a past, one that's pretty complicated. He's haunted by the memory of his younger brother, Yoriichi, Yoriichi, the guy who created sun breathing and is basically the demon slayer equivalent of a living legend. Deep down, Kokushibo has always been obsessed with proving himself, and that's where Tanjiro comes in. In this version of the story, Kokushibo is out on a mission when he hears about a family in the mountains, rumored to have ties to sun breathing. He doesn't think much of it at first, just another job for Muzan, right? But when he arrives, he finds the Kamado family's home in ruins, with Tanjiro and Nezuko barely surviving the massacre. Muzan's already come and gone, leaving behind a blood-soaked nightmare. But here's the twist. Instead of walking away or killing the two of them, Kokushibo pauses. Something catches his attention. It could be Tanjiro's determination. Even after losing his entire family, he's still standing there, shielding Nezuko with everything he has. Or maybe it's how much Tanjiro reminds him of Yoriichi. There's something in his face, his energy, that stirs old memories Kokushibo can't ignore. Whatever it is, he decides not to kill them. Instead, he steps in and saves them. But Kokushibo doesn't do anything without a reason. He's not exactly the rescue mission type. He sees potential in Tanjiro, a spark that he could shape into something extraordinary. So instead of Giyu stumbling upon Tanjiro and Nezuko, it's Kokushibo who finds them and offers him a deal. He tells Tanjiro that he can give him the strength to protect Nezuko and avenge his family, but it's going to come at a cost. Tanjiro, desperate and unsure of what else to do, accepts, and just like that, the story veers off in a totally new direction. Tanjiro doesn't meet Urokudaki, he doesn't learn water breathing, or train with the Demon Slayer Corps right away. Instead, he's taken under Kokushibo's wing, entering a world that's brutal, demanding, and full of uncertainty. The way Kokushibo teaches moon breathing would also be a game changer. Moon breathing isn't smooth or gentle like water breathing. It's aggressive, sharp, and absolutely devastating. For someone like Tanjiro, who's naturally empathetic and soft-spoken, this would be a huge adjustment. But here's the thing about Tanjiro, he doesn't quit. Kokushibo could knock him down 100 times, and Tanjiro would get back up 101 times. That relentless determination is what Kokushibo would respect most about him, even if he didn't show it outright. In Kokushibo's own way, he'd push Tanjiro harder because he sees the potential to rival his brother Yoriichi, the greatest swordsman in history. That resemblance to Yoriichi would drive Kokushibo to make Tanjiro stronger than he's ever been. Now, Tanjiro's fighting style would be completely different in this timeline. Forget the fluid, graceful movements of water breathing. Under Kokushibo, Tanjiro's swordsmanship would become precise, calculated, and terrifyingly powerful. He'd learn how to overwhelm his opponents with sheer force and sharp crescent-shaped strikes. Kokushibo would drill strategy into Tanjiro's head, how to read his opponent, anticipate their moves, and strike with lethal precision. Kokushibo would challenge Tanjiro mentally and emotionally too. Moon breathing is a style born from darkness, and that would rub up against Tanjiro's natural compassion and humanity. Over time, Tanjiro might start questioning himself, whether his power is being used for the right reasons, or if he's becoming too much like the demons he's fighting. For the final selection, Tanjiro would step into that spooky, demon-filled forest, looking nothing like the uncertain, wide-eyed boy we saw in the original story. Kokushibo's training would have hardened him, so he wouldn't hesitate when the demons appeared. They'd charge at him, thinking he's an easy target, and he'd cut them down with precision. One strike, gone. It would probably feel effortless, but only because Kokushibo drilled those moves into him day after day. But it wouldn't be all smooth sailing. This is the final selection after all. Tanjiro might run into a demon that's more than just your average brute. A demon that senses the moon breathing technique and realizes it's something connected to the upper moons. This could lead to a more intense fight, where Tanjiro has to really push himself. Moon breathing is all about power and sharp, overwhelming attacks, so he'd have to pace himself to avoid burning out too quickly. By the end, Tanjiro would have not just survived the final selection, he'd dominate it. Now, Tanjiro's first mission wouldn't be some simple job to take out a lesser demon. With this level of skill, his reputation would already start spreading, and that means Muzan would hear about him. You can bet Muzan wouldn't ignore a rising demon slayer using a technique that looks suspiciously like moon breathing. He'd probably send a powerful demon to test the waters and see what's going on. So we can imagine Tanjiro facing a demon that's way beyond what a newbie should be dealing with, maybe even a lower moon. Nezuko would step in, and if Kokushibo helped her control her demon powers, she'd be way more effective in combat, matching Tanjiro's intensity as they fought side by side. Tanjiro, with his calculated attacks, would keep the demon on the defensive, while Nezuko would unleash raw power. When Tanjiro wins, and he would win, it'd be a statement. Muzan would hear about the defeat of his demon and start piecing things together. A kid using moon breathing? Suspicious. This would put a target on Tanjiro's back, making him a priority for Muzan's forces. The Mugen Train arc would have a dramatic turn. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke still meet up with Rengoku, who's as cheerful and inspiring as ever. They board the train, and Enmu traps them in his dream spell hell, just like in the original. The dream worlds still tug at their hearts, but here, Tanjiro's mental discipline, thanks to Kokushibo's brutal training, helps him break free a lot faster. He takes charge, waking the others and diving straight into battle. When it comes to fighting Enmu in his grotesque train form, Tanjiro's moon breathing completely changes the game. He doesn't waste as much time figuring out how to fight this massive demon. His precision cuts and deadly techniques go straight for Enmu's weak points, making the battle smoother and more efficient. The fight feels less desperate compared to the original story, but then Akaza shows up, and things get serious. Akaza immediately senses something strange about Tanjiro's fighting style. He recognizes the moon breathing and realizes it's Kokushibo's. This throws him off for a moment, but he's also thrilled by the challenge. Tanjiro joins Rengoku in the fight against Akaza, and their teamwork creates some incredible moments. Tanjiro's sharp, calculated strikes complement Rengoku's fiery, overwhelming power perfectly. They manage to push Akaza harder than he's ever been pushed before, but Akaza is still an upper moon, and his insane regeneration abilities make it nearly impossible to take him down. In the end, Rengoku still sacrifices himself, delivering an emotional speech to Tanjiro that leaves him both devastated and inspired. Akaza retreats as the sun rises, but not before reporting to Muzan about Tanjiro's moon breathing. The Entertainment District arc kicks off with Tengen bringing Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke along to investigate the disappearance of his wives. Tanjiro, now much more skilled with moon breathing, is a much more intimidating fighter. When he confronts Daki, his attacks are so precise and devastating that she quickly realizes she's outmatched. Things get wild when Gyutaro enters the fight. His blood demon art is even deadlier than Daki's techniques, and the siblings' coordination keeps Tanjiro and his friends on their toes. But the real shocker happens when Kokushibo shows up. Muzan, already suspicious of Kokushibo, sends him to help Gyutaro and Daki, but it's clear this is a test of loyalty. When Kokushibo arrives, Tanjiro is stunned. His mentor being on the battlefield is something he wasn't prepared for. Kokushibo, torn between his connection to Tanjiro and his orders from Muzan, doesn't attack directly, but instead creates a distraction. This distraction proves fatal. Tengen is outmatched, trying to hold off Gyutaro alone, and he sacrifices himself to give Tanjiro and the others a chance. In the end, Tanjiro and his friends manage to decapitate both Gyutaro and Daki at the same time, securing a hard-fought victory. But they leave the district without Tengen, and that loss stays with them. When Tanjiro heads to the Swordsmith village, things start out lighthearted. He's there to get his sword fixed after the battle, and meeting Haga Nezuka is as hilarious as ever. But the calm doesn't last. Two upper moons, Gyoko and Hantengu, launch a devastating attack on the village, and the fight pushes everyone to their limits. Tanjiro's moon breathing makes him a powerful force on the battlefield, but without the sun breathing technique, he struggles to deal decisive damage against Hantengu's regenerating clones. It's a brutal fight, and Tanjiro has to rely heavily on Mitsuri and Muichiro to pull through. Meanwhile, Muzan has finally had enough of Kokushibo. Convinced of his betrayal, Muzan confronts him directly. The battle between them is short but intense, with Kokushibo standing no chance against Muzan's overwhelming power. Kokushibo's death leaves a void, and it hits Tanjiro hard when he learns about it. Without his mentor, he feels both abandoned and determined to keep pushing forward. Back at Swordsmith Village, the turning point comes when Nezuko reveals her immunity to sunlight. This discovery is a beacon of hope for the Demon Slayer Corps, but it also makes Muzan even more desperate. He now knows Nezuko is the key to achieving his ultimate goal, and he shifts all his focus toward capturing her. The battle ends with Gyoko and Hantengu defeated, but it's a bittersweet victory. The loss of Kokushibo and the growing threat of Muzan loom over everyone. The final battle against Muzan could go in so many interesting directions. First off, without sun breathing, things are immediately tougher. Muzan is ridiculously strong, and sun breathing is such a key weapon in the original story. So maybe the Demon Slayers go all in on a strategy to just stall him until sunrise. Everyone, Giyu, Sanemi, Mitsuri, and even Zenitsu and Inosuke would have to team up, hitting Muzan from every single angle. And here's where things would get wild. Nezuko. She's immune to sunlight, right? Maybe she shows up in the middle of the fight and becomes the turning point. What if she uses her own body to hold Muzan down just as the sun rises? It'd be so intense, but it could also mean she sacrifices herself. Tanjiro seeing his sister literally burn away while ensuring Muzan is destroyed. It's heartbreaking, but also feels like something she'd do out of love for her brother and humanity. Then there's the really dark possibility. Muzan passes his powers to Tanjiro right before he dies, turning him into the new Demon King. That'd be insane. Without Kanao, or maybe anyone, around to administer the cure, Tanjiro might be stuck as a demon. But knowing Tanjiro, he'd probably try to resist the urge to harm humans. On the flip side, maybe Muzan is defeated, but Tanjiro loses so much in the process. Nezuko, his friends, his sense of purpose, that he decides to leave the Demon Slayer Corps altogether. I could see him taking a path similar to Kokushibo's, but in a way that's more selfless. Like, he becomes this wandering swordsman who protects people quietly, never sticking around long enough to get recognition. He'd carry Kokushibo's moon-breathing legacy with him, but in a way that redeems it. Or, and this is the happy ending option, Nezuko survives, and after everything, the Kamado siblings get to rebuild their lives. Maybe they go back to their home in the mountains, trying to find some sense of peace. Tanjiro might even use what he learned from Kokushibo to create a new style of breathing, a mix of moon and sun breathing, that he teaches to future Demon Slayers. He'd be like this legendary teacher who changes the Demon Slayer world forever. No matter how you spin it, Tanjiro's moon breathing training would add such a cool twist to the story, but it also brings more challenges. Would he be remembered as a hero, a tragic figure, or maybe even both? It's wild to think about all the ways this could go, but one thing's for sure, it would be unforgettable. Well, that's it for this video. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. The Upper Moons from Demon Slayer are some of the most powerful forces and interesting characters in the entire franchise, being the most elite of Muzan's forces. So what would happen if Doma, the Upper Moon 2, and the third most powerful demon on the planet, became a Demon Slayer instead of joining Muzan's forces? Now, we know that this demon is actually centuries old, but for the sake of our story, let's bring his birth a bit further forward in our timeline so that Doma is a parallel of the current Hashira. Now, even in this timeline, Doma is born with his rainbow-colored eyes and white hair, which lead to his parents making him the figurehead of the Paradise Faith cult. But his position as a religious figurehead only distresses Doma, as he does not believe in Buddha, gods, or paradise. And keep that in mind, because this part of his personality is going to be important later when he becomes a Demon Slayer. But the most important aspect of Doma's psyche is his emotionless state. Even when his mother committed a brutal murder-suicide, leaving him an orphan, Doma could only think of how disgusting the bloody mess was. Without parents, Doma is forced to carry on being the head of the Paradise Faith in order to survive. While he pities his followers, there's no remorse in his soul. He regards them like a human would look down on an ant. But Doma's entire worldview about the supernatural world is about to change. As his cult rises in popularity, he encounters tales of people plagued by supernatural beings that hunt at night and are many times stronger than a normal human. The challenge of taking down demons awakens a spark in Doma's soul, and through the Paradise Faith, he manages to reach out to the water Hashira, Urokudaki Sakonji. Training under Urokudaki, Doma learns water breathing, but based on his cold heart and the cryokinetic abilities he had as a demon, Doma would probably develop his own breathing style called ice breathing. Due to his incredibly high intelligence, Doma becomes a sword-fighting prodigy, and passes the final selection with ease. After a few years in the Demon Slayer Corps, he manages to kill one of the lower moons, and takes his place at the top as the Ice Hashira. But while they're undeniably on the same side, Doma does not get along well with the most powerful warrior of them all, the Stone Hashira Gyomei. There are a few reasons for this, but the most obvious one is Doma's atheism directly clashes with Gyomei's spirituality as a Buddhist monk. The Ice Hashira's irreverence and cool attitude remain among the few things that can set Gyomei on edge. Another thing that annoys the Stone Hashira is the continuation of the Paradise Faith. But this time, Doma legitimately does try to help people instead of devouring them, and uses the cult to distribute wisteria incense and protect people from demonic forces. Now let's put a pause on Doma's story before Tanjiro enters the picture, and take a look at how events in the main Demon Slayer timeline would change if Doma was not a demon. Now the first major change is that Doma does not join the Upper Moons, meaning that the rank of Upper Moon 2 will eventually go to Akaza, as he beats everyone aside from Kokushibo. But that's not the only Upper Moon who gets affected by the change in our timeline. Think back to how Gyutaro and Daki were turned into demons. Doma was walking through the entertainment district searching for young women to devour when he found the dying siblings. At the time, Doma was the Upper Moon 6, and gave his blood to Gyutaro and Daki, challenging them to grow strong enough to rival the 12 Kizuki. But in our new timeline, the entertainment district leaves the two siblings to die, and their bodies are eventually cleared out the next morning. So who will take up the vacant positions among the Upper Moons? I think it's pretty likely that Nakime will be appointed as the Upper Moon 5, with Gyoko and Hantengu taking ranks 3 and 4. Now, while it would be nice for Enmu to take the number 6 spot among the Upper Moons, it's more likely that this seat stays vacant until Kokushibo turns Kaigaku into a demon. Now that we've looked at the demons, let's see how the Demon Slayer ranks will change when we remove Doma from the main timeline. In the original story, the flower Hashira Kanae Kocho battles Doma until sunrise and eventually dies of her injuries. That means that in this timeline, Kanae survives and remains as one of the Demon Slayer's greatest assets. While Shinobu was already the insect Hashira at the time, Kanae's death pushed her to go beyond her limits and become more powerful. So Shinobu might actually end up being a little bit weaker in our timeline. We now know from Shinobu's description during the rehabilitation arc that Kanae was very forgiving of demons and believed they could be saved, meaning that she would likely support Tanjiro and Nezuko in their journey as well. But there's one character that might actually disappear from the Demon Slayer story if Doma becomes a Demon Slayer, and that character is the beast-breathing specialist Inosuke Hashibara. You see, Inosuke's mother was a member of the Paradise Faith, and she was eaten by Doma. But since the Paradise Faith is an actual charity this time around, Inosuke's mom survives and actually lives a decent life, meaning that he won't be abandoned as a child. If Inosuke grows up in a loving home, there's absolutely no reason for him to go into the forest and grow up among wild boars, meaning that he won't even learn beast breathing in the first place. So let's balance everything out now. In the Taisho era, we have no Inosuke and a weaker Shinobu, but the Hashira ranks are bolstered by the Flower Hashira Kanae and the Ice Hashira Doma. So how did the main events of the Demon Slayer timeline change? Well, things might get difficult for Tanjiro without Inosuke by his side, but he will probably be replaced by Genya, who has also passed the final selection alongside Tanjiro and Zenitsu. Now, the initial arcs of the story from Mount Naragumo and the Entertainment District will likely be the same since Genya is a pretty solid replacement for Inosuke. There's also no real reason for Doma to get involved in these incidents. The same is true for the Swordsmith village, because it's hard to imagine a reason for Doma to be there unless he was getting a new sword. And anyway, the Demon Slayers managed to fend off the two upper moons with no casualties. The first significant change comes during the Hashira training arc. With Kanae alive, there are now 9 active Hashira even after Kyojiro's death and Tengen's retirement. So when Tanjiro and the others turn up to train, Doma focuses on temperature resistance and psychological fortitude, forcing the young Demon Slayers to perform sword drills in freezing conditions while managing their breathing techniques. His training is brutal without being cruel, and his apathetic nature enables him to gauge when students are reaching their physical limits without being emotionally affected by their pain. During this arc, Doma becomes particularly intrigued by the Kamado siblings' relationship, and Tanjiro's ability to show empathy toward demons. This challenges Doma's worldview that demons are simply threats to be eliminated, sparking the first genuine emotion Doma has felt in years: curiosity. The Infinity Castle arc begins with Nakime's blood demon art transporting the Hashira into the ever-shifting fortress. Due to the altered power structure, the battles are redistributed differently. Akaza, now Upper Moon 2, has grown significantly stronger over the years without Doma above him. His martial arts have evolved, and his destructive power has increased exponentially. However, his Akaza principles remain unchanged. He still refuses to fight or eat women, and maintains his warrior's code. When the Hashira are separated within the castle, Doma finds himself face to face with Akaza in a vast chamber that seems to respond to the Ice Hashira's presence. Before their battle begins, Akaza immediately recognizes something familiar about Doma's rainbow eyes and white hair. Muzan had been keeping an eye on the figurehead of the Paradise Faith. As a demon, Doma's calm and emotionless nature would have made him the perfect psychopathic killer. The fight begins with Akaza immediately unleashing his blood demon arts, but Doma's ice breathing immediately counters, seemingly creating a dome of ice that absorbs and redirects the shockwaves. Thrilled by the Demon Slayer's strength, Akaza makes Doma an offer to join the demons, just like the one he made Kyojiro all those months ago. But Doma responds with his characteristic emotionless tone. I have no interest in becoming a demon. You represent everything I despise, allowing emotion to cloud judgment. This enrages Akaza as Doma implies that his life's work to become a great martial artist was basically an emotional whim. With the disrespect stinging what's left of his soul, Akaza charges at Doma once again. In the original timeline where they were both demons, Akaza could never hurt Doma. But this time, Doma's humanity makes him falter, and the pain of his injuries becomes too much for even his icy demeanor to hide. But that pain brings clarity to Doma's mind, allowing him to move from being just plain emotionless to accepting the selfless state. All of a sudden, Akaza finds it harder to predict Doma's moves. He can no longer sense the killer intent that telegraphed the Ice Hashira's attacks. As he picks up the pace once again, Doma awakens his Demon Slayer mark and grips his sword tightly, making the Nichirin blade shine a deep red. In this moment of calmness and power, Doma finally understands Akaza. He speaks out loudly, "You're not fighting me, you're fighting your own weakness, your own human memories." The psychological insight hits Akaza hard. His compass needle wavers as suppressed memories of why he wanted to become strong emerge. And in that moment, Doma strikes, beheading Akaza cleanly. But this wasn't a physical victory. Akaza could reattach his head if he really wanted to. However, Doma had already won the psychological battle a while back. As Akaza disintegrates, he remembers Koyuki and smiles. hoping that they'll be reunited in the afterlife. The battle with Akaza marks a turning point for Doma. He understands that strength is about the connections we make and the people we choose to protect. In the final battle against Muzan, Doma throws himself at the Demon King with no thoughts of self-preservation. His relentless attacks prove crucial in slowing down the Demon King's regeneration, buying precious time for the other Hashira to land decisive blows. When the dust settles and Muzan is defeated, Doma is far too heavily injured to survive. In his last moments, he makes amends with Gyomei and asks him to dissolve the Paradise Faith, declaring that people should find their own meaning in life. So what do you think of Doma's career as a demon slayer? Is this path more interesting than the original? As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Sun breathing is the strongest breathing style in the Demon Slayer universe, but moon breathing stands as its closest rival, created by none other than Yoriichi's older brother Michikatsu. In today's video, we'll explore how the Demon Slayer story would change if Tanjiro learned moon breathing from Kokushibo and merged it with sun breathing to create a new signature breathing style. Now obviously, this theory is going to turn the entire Demon Slayer universe upside down, so let's go all the way back to that cold, snowy night when Kibutsuji Muzan slaughtered the Kamado family. In this storyline, fate takes a darker turn, because it's not Giyu who appears at the Kamado household. Kokushibo is wandering the mountains, seeking civilians for prey, or hopefully a strong demon slayer to give him a challenge. When he stumbles upon the siblings, it's initially a pitiful sight. A young boy tries to hold off his sister who's been turned into a bloodthirsty demon. But just as he prepares to leave the scene, Kokushibo notices something unusual. The boy's Hanafuda earrings are the exact same ones that Yoriichi used to wear all those years ago, and the scar on his forehead is in precisely the same location as Yoriichi's Demon Slayer mark. As far as he knew, Yoriichi and Uta didn't have a child, but what if there was some detail of his brother's bloodline that Kokushibo had missed? In that moment, Kokushibo makes a decision that will reshape the Demon Slayer world forever. He decides to spare them both. Nezuko is already a demon, but the Upper Moon One has no trouble knocking her unconscious. Tanjiro is terrified, but he's also desperate. Kokushibo picks up Nezuko and asks Tanjiro to follow him, leaving the boy with no choice but to travel with this mysterious stranger. Kokushibo takes the siblings deep into the mountains, to a hidden sanctuary unknown to both demons and demon slayers. For the first time since becoming a demon, the Upper Moon One feels a sense of purpose. He sees Tanjiro as a way to preserve the legacy of the Tsugikuni bloodline. Kokushibo tells Tanjiro that his sister had been turned into a demon. As a regular human, he would be completely helpless against her, but Kokushibo offers to train him to be strong enough to protect Nezuko and avenge his family. Accepting the idea of demons isn't too difficult for Tanjiro, as Saburo had warned him about this very thing the night before. The more pressing question for him is Kokushibo's identity, but naturally the demon refuses to share any details and tells Tanjiro that he will have to leave if he asks too many questions. And so begins Tanjiro's brutal training in moon breathing. Urokudaki was a tough teacher in the original timeline, but he was at least a kind-hearted person. Kokushibo is merciless in comparison, as he pushes Tanjiro to his limits, forcing him to think on the spot, and never hesitating to deal a heavy blow to demonstrate the cost of slipping up. Learning moon breathing triggers Tanjiro's childhood memories. He's seen something like this before. Tanjiro mentions to his master that the moon breathing forms have some similarities to a dance his father used to perform called the Hinokami Kagura. The dance of the fire god, Kokushibo mutters. He asks Tanjiro to perform any movements he remembers and is shocked to realize that this dance is a toned-down version of sun breathing. Kokushibo thinks that his theory was right all along. Yoriichi's bloodline appears to have survived, but it's even better than he expected. The basic movements of sun breathing have been preserved as well. Kokushibo immediately switches focus to rebuild sun breathing together with Tanjiro. Moon breathing could wait. He'd already perfected it over centuries. As Tanjiro practices the dance-like movements, fragments of memories that aren't his own begin to surface. He sees a gentle man performing a sacred dance under the sun, movements that feel both familiar and forbidden. These are the ancestral memories of Sumiyoshi, his ancestor who witnessed Yoriichi Tsugikuni perform sun breathing to save his family from demons. As his training progresses, Kokushibo sends Tanjiro on missions to practice fighting against actual demons, armed with a Nichirin sword that Kokushibo took from a demon slayer. One night, during an intense battle against a particularly vicious demon, Tanjiro enters a state almost like a trance, and his body moves on its own. Suddenly, his strikes burst with a radiance that contrasted beautifully with the crescent moon slashes he'd been taught. Kokushibo witnesses this moment from afar and is filled with shock, recognition, and something that might have even been pride. The boy has finally accessed sun breathing, the very technique that eluded Michikatsu Tsugikuni all those years ago. But what Tanjiro performed that night was not sun breathing in its purest form. He did not yet have the mastery to pull that off. What he created was neither sun nor moon, a perfect convergence of light and shadow that resulted in a devastating eclipse. If everything stayed the same, Tanjiro would have worked with Kokushibo to develop Eclipse Breathing, but his nightly activities had caught the attention of the Demon Slayers. Gyomei is sent to the forest that Tanjiro trains in to investigate the mysterious demon hunting activities that weren't approved of by the Corps, but instead of finding a swordsman, he stumbles upon none other than the Upper Moon One. Kokushibo's imposing presence leaves the stone Hashira deeply unsettled, but he doesn't hesitate to charge at the demon. Gyomei makes a valiant effort, but he hasn't awakened the Demon Slayer mark yet and he's fighting on his own. This is a one-sided stomp for Kokushibo, but he fails to end the battle before Tanjiro returns, and for the first time he witnesses Kokushibo killing a human with his flesh swords. As a demon, the right choice would have been to kill Tanjiro then and there, but Kokushibo isn't a slave to Muzan's will. Kokushibo reveals that he's the strongest of Muzan's demons and tells Tanjiro everything about sun breathing and the history of the Demon Slayers. Knowing that the rest of the Demon Slayers will arrive soon, and unwilling to get Tanjiro caught in the crossfire, Kokushibo leaves, and Tanjiro is left alone to figure out his fate. Notified by Gyomei Kasugai's Crow, a group of Demon Slayers led by Giyu Tomioka arrives at Kokushibo's sanctuary. Giyu sees Tanjiro and Nezuko, but neither of them resembles the demon that killed Gyomei. He immediately notes that the demon in the box is extremely weak, a minor threat at best. What's more intriguing is the boy that stands before him with a sword in hand. Tanjiro is definitely not a demon slayer, but he had the aura of a trained swordsman. Tanjiro doesn't resist and agrees to come with the demon slayers as long as they don't harm Nezuko. Giyu realizes that he shouldn't act on his own in this strange situation, and instead asks for a meeting with Master Kaguya and the other Hashira at the Ubuyashiki mansion. Kaguya meets Tanjiro and is intrigued by his story. A swordsman trained in moon breathing by a demon was unheard of, so there was no precedent to judge the situation. Sanemi suggested they should kill the siblings then and there, but Kaguya has a better idea. He wants to see Tanjiro's skills first. Tanjiro is put through the final selection, but at this point, the demons on Mount Fujikasane are just fodder. He obliterates the hand demon, and within a couple days, he can't find a fight as demons actively avoid him. Tanjiro's skills are beyond reproach, so he officially joins the Demon Slayer Corps and begins developing the full forms of Eclipse Breathing. At this point, he's drawing on Sumiyoshi Kamado's memories, and training with the image of Yoriichi in his ancestor's mind. Tanjiro performs the Eclipse Breathing first form, Twilight Severance, a devastating attack that combines Sun Breathing's power with Moon Breathing's vicious slashes. The Demon Slayers still aren't ready to accept this new young upstart, and for his first mission he's thrown right off the deep end, and sent to Mount Naragumo with Inosuke and Zenitsu. But this time, it's not a fight to the death. Tanjiro trained with the Upper Moon One, so taking out a lower moon like Rui is barely a challenge. The Demon Slayers are forced to acknowledge his abilities, but they aren't the only ones who learned of Tanjiro's strengths. Through the Lower Moon 5, Muzan sees a human performing a mix of sun and moon breathing. One technique hasn't been known for 5 centuries, and the other was the specialty of just one swordsman. Muzan immediately senses that Kokushibo was involved, but instead of killing his top lieutenant, he assigns a mission to the Upper Moon One: eliminate the Demon Slayer who uses Eclipse Breathing. On the one hand, Kokushibo doesn't want the Tsukikuni legacy to die, but he also knows that defying Muzan won't help him or Tanjiro. Instead, Kokushibo decides that he'll get what he always wanted: a hard-fought battle to the death that tests the limits of his strength. Now, Tanjiro is probably not powerful enough to take on Kokushibo one-on-one, so the Upper Moon One decides that he'll attack in a more favorable setting for the Demon Slayers. So when Muzan prepares to launch his assault on the Swordsmith village, Kokushibo volunteers to go instead of Gyoko and Hantengu, as he knows Tanjiro will be there. This time, the Hashira aren't split, as Kokushibo lays waste to the village starting right at the center. Mitsuri, Genya, Tanjiro, and Muichiro all rush to the scene, converging to take on this new mysterious threat. Kokushibo is surprised. He was expecting to see Tanjiro, but he senses that Muichiro is also one of his kin, a descendant of the children he abandoned so long ago. The ensuing battle is both physically and emotionally devastating, as Tanjiro is forced to wrestle with the burden of fighting his former master. Initially, Kokushibo overwhelms the Demon Slayers, but starting with Tanjiro, they awaken their marks, slowly adapting and defending themselves from Kokushibo's swords. The critical moment comes when a desperate Genya sacrifices himself, being mortally wounded for the chance to bite off one of Kokushibo's flesh swords. His new demonic powers let Genya restrain Kokushibo, while Mitsuri and Muichiro break through his defenses. Sensing the opening thread, Tanjiro crashes through the Eclipse Breathing 9th form, Totality. Unable to fend off 4 threats at once, Kokushibo is finally beheaded. As his body disintegrates, Michikatsu's memories return. He remembers his quest to be strong and smiles as he realizes that Tanjiro has achieved everything he ever dreamed of being. With his master's passing, Tanjiro makes a solemn promise: the legacy of Eclipse Breathing will only close with the death of the Demon King. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another awesome Demon Slayer video. Tsukikuni Yoriichi was the most powerful swordsman of his time and remained unrivaled for over 500 years until the golden age of demon slayers came about in the Taisho era. But what if Yoriichi didn't have to fight alone? In today's video, let's take a look at what the Demon Slayer universe would look like if Tanjiro was raised by Yoriichi. Our story begins in the Sengoku era with a young Yoriichi training to become a swordsman. Even at the age of 7, he possesses unparalleled strength and raw potential, easily surpassing his masters. Unlike other swordsmen, Yoriichi was born with a Demon Slayer mark, which gave him access to the transparent world, a form of extrasensory perception that allows a fighter to see the inner workings of his enemy's body. Despite his immense talents, Yoriichi was a reserved and polite individual who was only truly understood by his wife, Uta. But Uta and her unborn child's deaths at the hands of a demon drove Yoriichi to the furthest depths of grief. This suffering gave Yoriichi the resolve he needed to become a demon slayer. In his quest to push beyond his limits, Yoriichi developed sun breathing, the foundation of all other breathing techniques used by the Demon Slayer core. Together with sun breathing and his other abilities like the selfless state, Yoriichi hunted down and critically injured Kibutsuji Muzan, forcing the Demon King to disintegrate his body into 1,800 pieces in order to escape. However, his failure to kill Muzan and his brother Kokushibo joining the demons led the Demon Slayers to banish Yoriichi from among their ranks, forcing him to be a wandering swordsman instead. Yoriichi meets Kamado Sumiyoshi later in life and saves Sumiyoshi and his wife from a demon. He befriends the Kamado family and is moved by the bonds shared between Sumiyoshi, Suyako, and Sumire. Sometime later, Suyako gives birth to another child, Tanjiro. One day, when Yoriichi is out, the Kamado family is attacked by demons once again. Sumiyoshi uses his memory of Yoriichi's sun breathing to fight off the demon using the Hinokami Kagura. However, he's not a trained fighter and eventually succumbs to his injuries. While Suyako and Sumire are killed by the demon, Sumiyoshi's valiant struggle buys just enough time for Yoriichi to return before Tanjiro is also devoured. The sun-breathing swordsman makes short work of the demon, but is unable to save his friend. When he looks at the infant Tanjiro, Yoriichi sees a kindred soul who has lost everything. He decides to raise the young boy as his own and train Tanjiro to avenge his family. Originally, Tanjiro only learned Hinokami Kagura by watching his father perform it during the winter. Based on these observations alone, he eventually managed to put together all 12 forms in his final fight against Muzan. But this time, Tanjiro is being trained directly by the creator of the technique. He doesn't need to figure out every step on his own. Together with Yoriichi, Tanjiro manages to refine sun breathing to suit his body well before his teenage years. His natural strength and hardiness is amplified through the rigorous training that Yoriichi puts him through. Tanjiro's keen sense of smell catches Yoriichi's attention early on. He realizes that honing this ability even further would give Tanjiro an edge in battle. Under Yoriichi's guidance, Tanjiro faces his first demons much earlier than in the original timeline. When he turns 10, Yoriichi begins taking him on controlled hunts to experience real combat situations. Thanks to these excursions, Tanjiro has more time to develop other techniques, such as total concentration breathing, the transparent world, and the selfless state. After discovering these abilities in battle, Tanjiro is able to refine them under Yoriichi's guidance, and approach demons on par with the 12 moons as a polished and complete fighter. As they encounter more and more demons, Yoriichi observes Tanjiro developing a unique quality, a sense of empathy that allows him to respect even demons as they pass from this world. Yoriichi observes this with quiet approval, seeing the pure humanity in his pupil that he himself struggles to maintain after decades of battle. By the time he's 13, Tanjiro has been training for years and is ready to join the Demon Slayers. Thanks to Yoriichi's training, he's head and shoulders above his competition and passes the final selection with ease. But it's not only swordsmanship that sets Tanjiro apart from his peers. Losing his parents so early has matured him beyond his years, making him more emotionally and spiritually stable than when he was trained by Urokodaki. Tanjiro learns to control his emotions under stressful situations, and has probably already fought a few demons alongside Yoriichi. He inherits the calm and stoic disposition of his mentor, while retaining his compassion and goodness of heart. However, a fire still burns deep within Tanjiro's soul. He learns about the Demon King Muzan from Yoriichi, and the desire to avenge his family grows with every passing day. As a wielder of the most powerful breathing technique, Tanjiro quickly becomes an asset to the Demon Slayers. Meanwhile, he feeds intel to Yoriichi as well, who continues to fight demons off the record. Despite Yoriichi being more involved in this timeline, Muzan will probably avoid resurfacing until the great swordsman is dead, so Yoriichi's story does not change in this timeline, with him eventually dying of old age during his final encounter with Kokushibo. However, the Demon Slayers of the Sengoku era will change considerably. Tanjiro will rise through the ranks and achieve the title of the Sun Hashira during his youth. Originally, the Demon Slayers developed the water, flame, stone, wind, and thunder breathing styles based on sun breathing, and had to improve these techniques themselves. However, Tanjiro's presence as a true sun breather sets a standard for them to aspire to. His strength will inspire them to surpass their limits, and his guidance will help them perfect their techniques much sooner. So when Muzan reappears after Kokushibo informs him of Yoriichi's death, he does not face the same weak Demon Slayer core. Instead, he goes against a professional fighting force that has been honing their skills for decades. This means that we will probably see a showdown similar to the original series, happening well before the Taisho era. As the Hashira grow in strength under Tanjiro's leadership, they begin taking out upper moons, intensifying Muzan's rage. Emboldened by their success, the Demon Slayers go on a mission to breach the Infinity Castle and challenge the Demon King. There they fight the powerful demons we already know, such as Nakime, Akaza, Doma, and Kokushibo. With Tanjiro and the other Hashira activating their Demon Slayer marks and red Nichiren swords, it's only a matter of time before Kokushibo is the only upper moon who stands in their way. The Upper Moon 1 presents a formidable challenge even to Tanjiro. His moon-breathing technique acts as a counter to sun-breathing and overwhelms the strongest Hashira. Despite his overwhelming strength, the sight of the familiar sun-breathing form sends tremors through Kokushibo's bones. Each fluid movement brings back memories of Yoriichi's prodigious swordsmanship. For the first time in years, Kokushibo feels the stirring of an emotion he thought had died along with Yoriichi: envy. He envied not only Tanjiro's skill, but also his inheritance of the sun-breathing, the only technique with a legacy greater than Kokushibo's. A single moment of emotional turmoil was all it took to shift the tide of battle. Kokushibo faltered momentarily, giving the Hashira a window to go on the offensive. With everyone working together and a few Hashira losing their lives in the process, the Demon Slayers are able to behead Kokushibo and permanently put him to rest. And this brings us to the final challenge, Kibutsuji Muzan. In this timeline, Tamayo has not yet developed her anti-Muzan poison, meaning that the fatigued Demon Slayers will be facing the Demon King at his full strength. As the battle begins, Muzan demonstrates why he is the undisputed Demon King. He relentlessly slashes at the remaining Hashira, pushing them back and forcing them to defend. Even when the Demon Slayers land a hit, it appears to be useless due to Muzan's immediate regeneration. The Hashira fight valiantly, but are gradually overwhelmed by Muzan's seemingly limitless power. In this desperate moment, overwhelmed by the grief of losing his comrades, Tanjiro accesses the complete selfless state. With no fighting spirit radiating from him, Muzan struggles to target Tanjiro. With his mind cleared, Tanjiro is able to use the transparent world more effectively, and sees Muzan's body as Yoriichi once did. He sees the vital points, the 7 hearts and 5 brains of the Demon King that he needs to target. In this state, with the future of humanity on the line, Tanjiro perfectly executes the 13th form of sun-breathing. Yoriichi had conceptualized this technique during his final days together with Tanjiro, but had never named it. Striking with a staggering combination of all 12 sun-breathing forms, this attack catches Muzan off guard. For a moment, he sees Yoriichi attacking him through Tanjiro's blade. As the Demon King freezes in terror, he's struck by the combined might of Yoriichi's swordsmanship and Tanjiro's unbreakable will. Muzan's body begins to disintegrate under the heat of Tanjiro's bright red blade. In his final moments, Muzan recognizes the similarities between Tanjiro and Yoriichi, not just in technique but in spirit. With the rising sun weakening him further and Tanjiro's relentless assault continuing, Muzan finally falls. And with that, the era of demons comes to an end much earlier than in the original timeline. Tanjiro, having fulfilled his vows to avenge his family, turns his attention to rebuilding a world free from demonic threats. With Muzan dead, the Demon Slayer Corps disbands and fractures into many schools of swordsmanship dedicated to preserving the knowledge of breathing techniques for future generations who might face similar threats. Is this version of Yoriichi's story more satisfying than the original? Let us know your thoughts down below, and stay tuned for more incredible Demon Slayer theories and what-ifs. See you in the next video. Bye! Tanjiro's rediscovery of sun-breathing through the Hinokami Kagura ushered in a golden age of Demon Slayers during the Taisho era, with him ultimately leading the charge to defeat Muzan during the Sunrise Countdown. But what if Tanjiro was unable to master sun-breathing through his ancestral memories? In today's video, we'll explore a timeline where Tanjiro creates his own breathing style. Now, before we get to how the story diverges in this timeline, let's establish what'll remain the same. Just like in the original story, the Kamado household is attacked by Muzan, and Nezuko is transformed into a demon. The water Hashira Gyu finds the two siblings and sends them to Orokodaki Sakonji for further guidance. Most of the initial arcs proceed in pretty much the same manner, with Tanjiro successfully beating the Temple Demon, surviving the final selection, and also making his way through the Asakusa District arc. Our timeline diverges after Tanjiro's devastating battle with Rui. In the original story, this is the critical moment where Tanjiro awakens the Hinokami Kagura and begins his path towards uncovering sun-breathing. During the battle with Rui, just when Tanjiro is about to be killed, he experiences something unprecedented instead of accessing his father's dance. The images of his father's dance are still there, but he can't copy them perfectly. Instead, the life or death situation forces his subconscious to innovate in real time. The muscle memory from the water-breathing form Zorokodaki drilled into him takes over Tanjiro's body, and he combines the flowing movements with aggressive explosive slashes, born from pure desperation. Tanjiro doesn't even realize what he's done. In the heat of battle, he creates movements that are both gentle and fierce, like clouds that can drift peacefully or unleash devastating storms. The technique that holds off Rui isn't sun breathing, but rather an imperfect, raw form of what you get when water meets the sun: cloud breathing. But the new technique isn't enough to compensate for Tanjiro's inexperience, and Rui still manages to avoid being killed by this new form. However, Tanjiro buys just enough time for Giyu to arrive on the scene, and the water Hashira takes out the lower moon with his unique water-breathing form, Dead Calm. During his recovery at the Butterfly Mansion, Tanjiro begins obsessing over what happened during the Rui fight. He knows he used something beyond water breathing, but he can't access the Hinokami Kagura memories. Instead, he begins experimenting, trying to recreate and understand these new movements. Being at the Butterfly Mansion presents the perfect opportunity for Tanjiro, because he's in the presence of a Hashira who is known for innovation. The insect Hashira, Shinobu Kocho, not only created her own breathing style in the form of insect breathing, but also introduced a completely new approach to fighting demons. Think about it. All their demon slayers rely on beheading demons to kill them, but Shinobu alone uses poison because she's also too weak to behead the likes of the 12 Kizuki. So, as someone who understands the importance of adapting techniques to one's natural abilities and circumstances, Shinobu becomes Tanjiro's first mentor as he develops cloud breathing. Over the weeks following the Rui incident, Tanjiro works with Shinobu to systematize his discoveries. They analyze the movements step by step, understanding how he unconsciously combined water breathing's flow with explosive, unpredictable techniques. But just as Tanjiro begins to understand his technique, he's summoned on a new mission, this time accompanying the Flame Pillar Rengoku on the Mugen train. Shinobu realizes that this is an opportunity since she's already noticed the similarities between Tanjiro's cloud breathing and Rengoku's powerful strikes. She advises Tanjiro to speak to the Flame Hashira after the mission and try to learn what he might know about the Hinokami Kagura. Now, the battle against Enmu goes just about the same as it did in the original timeline, with Tanjiro breaking out of the Dream Realm and taking on the demon together with Inosuke. While Rengoku, Zenitsu, and Nezuko defend the passengers, there's only one real question here. Can Tanjiro cut through the train's body to behead Enmu without sun breathing? All the training with Shinobu must amount to something, and cloud breathing proves incredibly effective in unlocking Tanjiro's strength. The Lower Moon one is defeated, but now for the bigger challenge of this arc. When Akaza appears, he faces off against Rengoku in a fierce battle. Now, Tanjiro's body isn't on the verge of collapsing in this timeline, since he's much better acclimated to the cloud breathing than he was the sun breathing, but he's still unable to keep up with the fight. Inosuke makes the smart call here and holds back Tanjiro, pointing out that he'd only get in Rengoku's way if he tried to help. Just like in the original timeline, Rengoku doesn't survive, but his interest in Tanjiro's cloud breathing leads him to giving the young demon slayer his sword's guard and directing Tanjiro to read the Rengoku family archives. In the lead up to the Entertainment District arc, Tanjiro continues to work on his cloud breathing with Shinobu and manages to perfect 7 forms of his new breathing style. The first form, Cumulus Shield, is made up of rotating defensive strikes that can deflect attacks while simultaneously counterattacking. Meanwhile, his 5th form, Stormfront Advance, is an aggressive charging technique that builds momentum like an approaching storm. But the most interesting one is the 7th form, Dawn Breaking Through Storm Clouds, which combines all forms into a beautiful but utterly destructive attack. The events of the Entertainment District arc proceed as usual until Gyutaro emerges and the real fight begins. The younger Demon Slayer faces off against Daki, while Tengen takes on the more dangerous Gyutaro. Now, as the fight continues, it becomes clear that Tanjiro is actually outclassing Daki. Nezuko doesn't even really need to break out of her box, as Tanjiro rushes forward. The battle isn't clear by any means, and Tanjiro is barely escaping being cut into pieces by Daki's sashes, but he's able to put pressure on the demon instead of constantly being on the back foot. But the real benefit of Tanjiro's mastery over cloud breathing appears when he switches over to support Tengen. His speed can't possibly match the sound Hashiras, but Tanjiro is able to pose enough of a threat to Gyutaro to make life difficult for the Upper Moon 6. The openings he creates allows Tengen to land some solid blows on Gyutaro, while Nezuko, Inosuke, and Zenitsu keep Daki in check. Unlike the original timeline, the Demon Slayers aren't buried under the rubble of the Entertainment District. Gyutaro still manages to poison Inosuke and Tengen, but the Sound Hashira avoids losing an arm and an eye in this showdown. Now, this victory is huge, because instead of Tengen being out of commission for the rest of the series, he actually stays in the core as a swordsman that's killed in Upper Moon. The next challenge for Tanjiro comes during the Swordsmith Village arc, where he must face Hantengu together with Mitsuri and Genya. Now, the events of this arc don't really change much, since Tanjiro's main task was to hunt down Hantengu's smaller body, while Mitsuri fended off Zohakuten. The more interesting outcome is that Tanjiro finds a new training partner. Muichiro sees him training against the Yoriichi Type 0 doll, and realizes that cloud breathing is more like the antithesis to his own mist breathing style. This becomes important during the Hashira training arc, where Tanjiro is actually pushed further due to having Muichiro as a sparring partner instead. With these key differences, Tanjiro is shaping up to be truly unstoppable, but his growth is cut short when the Demon Slayers are summoned to the Infinity Castle using Nakimei's powers. When the Infinity Castle appears, Tanjiro enters not just as a Demon Slayer, but as the pioneer of an entirely new breathing style. The other Demon Slayers develop mixed feelings about Tanjiro during the Hashira training arc, with some seeing him as the future of demon slaying, while others worried about his use of untested techniques leading up to the final battle. In the castle, Tanjiro runs into Gyou, and the two quickly come face to face with the Upper Moon 3 Akaza. Tanjiro's rematch with Akaza becomes fundamentally different. Akaza saw Tanjiro fight on the Mugen train and didn't think much of him, but he's quickly stunned by the young Demon Slayer's growth since they last met. The battle becomes a strategic showdown of adaptation, as Gyou and Tanjiro desperately try to break through the incredible defensive power of Akaza's Compass Needle. With both the Demon Slayers unlocking their marks, Tanjiro finally manages to throw off Akaza's coordination with his cloud-breathing fourth form, Sunset Dispersal. Using the opening Tanjiro created, Gyou steps in to land the crushing final blow, taking out the Upper Moon 3 and allowing them to move forward. As Tanjiro and Gyou rush through the castle, they're disoriented once again, as Muzan kills Nakimei and brings the battle out into the open, where it's finally time for the sunrise countdown. When Muzan faces the assembled Demon Slayer Corps, he immediately focuses on Tanjiro. The battles he witnessed had semblances of sun breathing in them, but the Demon Slayer had turned it into something new, something different. Muzan recognizes that cloud breathing represents something he thought impossible, the evolution of sun breathing beyond its original form. As dawn approaches, Tanjiro's cloud breathing reaches its true potential. The seventh form, dawn breaking through storm clouds, becomes literal. Tanjiro channels the actual sunrise through his technique, combining all his forms into one. Some of you might already notice the parallel here, but Tanjiro is unknowingly carrying forward Yoriichi's will. In the same manner that Yoriichi planned to combine all the forms of sun breathing to simultaneously eliminate Muzan's vital organs, the final form of Tanjiro's wind breathing uses everything he's got to end the Demon King's reign of terror. In the final moments, Tanjiro realizes that cloud breathing was never just his innovation, it was his unconscious recreation of what sun breathing was meant to be. With Muzan defeated, the Demon Slayers can finally disband. Cloud breathing stands as the pinnacle of breathing styles, and the end product of a 500-year battle against the forces of evil. So what do you think? Would this version of Tanjiro have been more interesting than the original? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.
Hello Demon Slayer fans, what do you think? Who is the strongest character in the entire Demon Slayer universe? Maybe you say Yoriichi Sugikuni, right? Yes, Yoriichi Sugikuni is the strongest and the most furious human warrior, but he is mortal like every other human. That is his biggest weakness. Okay, what about Demon King Muzan Kibutsuji? Muzan indeed is the most powerful demon, and he is immortal, but he can't go out in the sun. That is to say, even if they are extremely strong, they're not the strongest due to their weaknesses. So who is the truly strongest character? In fact, there's none. All of them have some kind of weakness. So how about we create a character of our own and give him all the best traits while removing all the weaknesses? Sounds crazy, right? I'm talking about a character who has immortality like the Demon King Muzan, who is an extremely talented swordsman like Yoriichi, who could go in the sun and is immortal. So basically, there are 10 most vital traits of strength in a Demon Slayer character. Number 1, race. Number 2, breathing style. Number 3, sword skills. Number 4, blood demon art. Number 5, regenerative ability. Number 6, strength and stamina. Number 7, speed and agility. Number 8, intelligence. Number 9, demon slayer mark. And number 10, battle IQ. Our goal is to assign these traits to our character from the characters in the Demon Slayer universe who got the best of these skills. But before we start our video, there will be one rule of thumb that we cannot use 2 traits from one character. That means if we are using Gyu's water breathing style, we can't use another trait from him. So let's begin. Race, demon. Here we have mainly 2 options, humans and demons. Now, humans are great, but let's be real, demons are where the real power lies. They've got strength, speed, and healing abilities. Demons don't age, which means they can potentially live forever. Now you might be thinking, but humans can train and get stronger. True, but there's a ceiling to human potential. Even the strongest Hashira is still limited by their mortal body. Demons, on the other hand, can keep growing stronger by chowing down on more humans. Sure, demons have weaknesses, sunlight and Nichiren blades being the big ones, but they could be eliminated. So for our character, we're going with the demon race. It gives our character supreme strength, eternal youth, and cool blood-based superpowers. The next trait is breathing style. Breathing styles allow users to increase their strength, speed, and the stamina. Imagine you being a demon. You already have an immense amount of strength, speed, and stamina, but you can increase it even further. Crazy, right? Now, there are many breathing styles out there. Water, flame, thunder, wind, and more. But the strongest among them is the sun breathing style. Sun breathing, also known as Hinokami Kagura or the Dance of the Fire God, is the OG breathing style. Created by Yoriichi Sugikuni, it's the source from which all other breathing styles are derived. Sun breathing style is incredibly powerful and versatile. It combines offense and defense seamlessly, allowing the user to switch between attacking and defending faster. So, it is decided our character will have the sun breathing style, but from whom? There are 4 characters that have been known as users of the sun breathing style: Yoriichi Sugikuni, Tanjiro Kamado, Sumiyoshi Kamado, Tanjiro's ancestor, and Tanjiro Kamado, Tanjiro's father. We'll take this breathing style from Tanjiro Kamado, Tanjiro's dad. We're saving Tanjiro and Yoriichi for later. By giving our demon character sun breathing, we're creating a being that combines the raw power of a demon with the most potent breathing style in existence. The next trait is the swordsmanship skills. And when it comes to swinging a sword, who could challenge Yoriichi Sugikuni, the undisputed GOAT? Yoriichi's skills were so extraordinary that he's considered a once-in-a-millennium prodigy. He mastered the sword at a young age and was able to defeat a trained swordsman when he was just a child. This guy was so good in his skills that he nearly turned Muzan into demon sashimi on their first encounter. He sliced Muzan into 1,800 pieces, which is about 1,799 more pieces than most people can manage. If it wasn't for Muzan's last-minute cellular trick, the entire story of Demon Slayer might have ended right there. So, by giving our ultimate warrior Yoriichi's sword skills, we're ensuring he has unparalleled prowess with a blade. Number 4, Blood Demon Art. Since our character is a demon, we must assign him a Blood Demon Art. Blood Demon Arts are like superpowers for demons. So the question is, which is the most powerful Blood Demon Art in the Demon Slayer universe? The answer is Muzan's Biokinesis. Muzan's Biokinesis is undoubtedly the most powerful Blood Demon Art. With Biokinesis, Muzan could manipulate his own body at a cellular level, therefore he can reshape his entire body at will. He can split his body into multiple bodies, and he can inject his blood into others to create new demons. There are limitless possibilities with Muzan's Biokinesis Blood Demon Art. By giving our ultimate warrior Muzan's Biokinesis, we're creating a virtually unstoppable being. He can adapt to any situation, heal from any wound, and shape his body to overcome any obstacle. Number 5, Regenerative Ability. One of the best things about being a demon is that they can easily heal any wound. But not all demons have the same kind of regenerative abilities. In fact, we can assign a score based on regenerative abilities to each demon. On a scale of 5, only Muzan can get a score of solid 5 points. While Upper Moon 1 Demon Kokushibo and Upper Moon 2 Demon Doma have a score of 4, all other demons have scored less than 4. Since we've already used Muzan, we can't take a straight again. So we have to choose between Kokushibo and Doma. After thinking carefully, I've decided to go with Kokushibo. Because Kokushibo doesn't just regenerate, he evolutionizes. Yeah, I created that word. During his final battle, Kokushibo decided regular regeneration was too mainstream, so he started growing extra eyes and limbs. What sets Kokushibo's regeneration apart is its adaptability. When faced with the threat of Nichiren blades, which typically negate a demon's ability to regenerate, Kokushibo's body found a way around it. This adaptive regeneration isn't just about healing wounds, it's about evolving to become stronger, faster, and more resilient. And let's not forget the speed of this regeneration. Kokushibo can heal from severe wounds in seconds, so we'll give our character Kokushibo's regenerative abilities, and this way, we're ensuring he can bounce back from almost anything. Number 6, Strength and Stamina. Next up, we're pumping iron with Gyomei Himejima, the Stone Hashira. This guy isn't just strong, he's, I use a wrecking ball as a yo-yo strong. Gyomei's strength is legendary even among the Hashiras. He uses massive iron ball and axe connected by a chain as his weapon. Gyomei's strikes are so powerful, they can shatter rock and create shockwaves. It's like he's got a personal earthquake generator in each arm, and when Gyomei hits something, it stays hit. When Gyomei's strength, our character would have strength that defies logic and stamina that never runs out. Number 7, speed and agility. For speed and agility, we're tapping into Zenitsu's hidden talent, his unconscious state. You know, that thing where he goes from 0 to hero faster than the speed of thunder. Zenitsu's signature move, Thunderclap and Flash, is so fast that he can practically teleport. It's like watching a game of Now You See Me, Now You Don't, except the Now You Don't part usually ends with a demon being sliced and diced. What makes Zenitsu's speed truly remarkable is its precision. He's not just moving fast, he's moving fast with purpose. Every movement is calculated, every strike aimed at a vital point. It's like he's got a supercomputer in his brain that only boots up when he's unconscious. And let's not forget about the agility. Zenitsu doesn't just move in straight lines, he can change direction on a dime, leap impossible distances, and contort his body in ways that would make an acrobat grin with envy. It's like watching a pinball machine, if the pinball was sharp, yellow, and really good at killing demons. So by giving our character speed of Zenitsu, we are strapping a rocket to a cheetah. Overall in the best possible way. Number 8, intelligence. They say intelligence is half of the strength, so in order to make a truly strongest character, we must assign him the best of the brains. Therefore, we're going with Kaguya Obayashiki, the 97th leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. This guy indeed is the smartest character in the entire Demon Slayer universe. Kaguya's mind is sharper than a Nichiren blade. His strategic thinking and foresight are unparalleled. He can predict Muzan's moves and prepare countermeasures years in advance. But it's not just about long-term planning. Kaguya has an uncanny ability to analyze complex situations and come up with effective solutions on the fly. He can take in vast amounts of information, process it, and make decisions faster than most people can decide what to have for lunch. And let's not forget about his emotional intelligence. Kaguya has an innate understanding of people that borders on mind reading. He can inspire loyalty, boost morale, and unite people under a common cause like it's second nature. With Kaguya's intelligence, our character wouldn't just be a mindless killing machine, he'd be a tactical genius with the power to back it up. He could outthink his opponents, predict their moves, and always be 10 steps ahead. Number 9, Demon Slayer Mark. The Demon Slayer Mark is a game changer in the world of Demon Slayers. It's like hitting the superhuman jackpot, granting the user dramatically increased physical abilities and fighting prowess. When activated, it appears as a distinct pattern on the user's body, kind of like a magical tattoo. For our Demon Slayer Mark, we're stealing from the protagonist himself, Tanjiro Kamado. His mark is like a power-up in a video game, except instead of just glowing, you become strong enough to punch demons in the face. Tanjiro's mark is special because it's directly connected to sun breathing, the most powerful breathing style. When activated, it turns Tanjiro from a determined kid with a sword into a demon-staying machine. His strength, speed, and endurance skyrocket to levels that can rival Upper Moon demons. It's like watching a caterpillar turn into a butterfly if butterflies were really good at decapitating demons. Number 10, Battle IQ. Last but not least, we're nabbing Gyo Tomioka's battle smarts. This guy's not just a pretty face with a cool hierarchy, he's got a mind sharper than his water-breathing techniques. Gyo's battle IQ is off the charts. He's like a supercomputer dedicated solely to the art of combat. In the heat of battle, when most people's brains turn to mush, Gyo's mind kicks into overdrive. He can analyze an opponent's techniques, identify weaknesses, and devise effective counters effectively. This calmness under pressure is what truly elevates Gyo's battle IQ. He can think clearly and make rational decisions even in the most chaotic situations. It's like he's got an internal Zen garden that keeps him centered no matter what's happening around him. Now, imagine giving this level of combat intelligence to our ultimate warrior. Combined with his superior intellect, godlike physical abilities, and demonic powers, he'd be utterly unstoppable in battle. Our warrior would be able to analyze and counter any technique thrown at them, adapt to any situation, and always stay 10 steps ahead of their enemies. It's like giving a grandmaster chess player the ability to move all pieces at once. The game is over before it even begins. And there you have it, the ultimate Demon Slayer character. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.